Let's call the regular meeting of the governing board to order. Let the record show all members are present. Let's rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay.
Separate consideration.
I move we adopt the agenda with the exception of removing items F and G from the consent agenda for separate consideration.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 And aye. Do you have something for summary of awards? Presentation, she has it on the agenda, but,
No, just a summary.
okay, well, I'll let you go for it.
We wanted to put the summary in the future, kind of a marker in our agendas of what happened in this previous meeting. So in the future, we're going to keep putting these things where everyone can see them, so there's a formal record of what actually happened and what had occurred. So that's what all that is. So in the future, you're going to see, for example, tonight was jazz band and that were given. That way, it's summated in our normal, regularly board meeting for record keeping.
Hey, do you want us to present anything or just have it noted, or you just want it
Just noted.
documented?
Yep, just documented.
Okay,
That's it.
okay. Governing board reports. Ms. Ordway.
Well, I just want to thank everybody again for this fabulous first semester. Athletics, our fine arts, all programs are going well, and our students are doing well. I did want to say I'm looking forward to the next semester, where we can maybe start deep diving into some of our study sessions that would involve looking at how we use suspension to, or not, to provide our students with behavior modification that'll last, and perhaps also some movement on transportation in the regards of making opportunities for CTE available to all of our high school students, not just the ones that can drive to get there. So, Happy New Year, I guess. Have a great break. And for everyone in the room and who's not in the room, thank you very much for all the hard work that's been put in and that will be put in for the next 2 weeks. And have patience with yourselves and your students, because you're all looking at the same break time. So thank you.
Ms. O'Brien.
Well, ditto what Mrs. Ordway said, but I would also like to thank the Fiesta Bowl charities as they awarded a grant to Be Fit, Be Healthy, Be Kind, which Constitution Elementary School is working with. And so they had a fabulous assembly. And I, once again, would like to go back to school, because school is so much different than it was when we were kids. So thank you to all of them. And the Constitution Elementary students were angels. It was an hour-long assembly, and it was just, they did a great job, and so thank you to them. I would also like to take a moment to thank the governor's office and Representative Heather Carter. She had a bill last budget session for post-secondary education assessments. It was for a grant monies. And we initially were on the waiting list, and I was so very excited to read in a recent update from Dr. Galligan that we had been included now in that grant. So thank you to the governor's office for finding additional monies to include other districts, so that now all of our high school juniors will be able to take, I believe we've chosen the ACT, Dr. Allen, she's shaking her head, so yes, thank you, as part of that grant. So I'm very excited about that, and shout out to, again, Representative Carter and the governor's office. So I hope everybody has a very happy holiday season and is able to enjoy their vacation from school, work, and have a good time with family and friends. Thank you.
Ms. Tweedy.
Saturday, Jenny and I, or Miss Frank and I, we crashed the party at Sierra Verde, and we went to the reindeer race, and pretty sure we came in last place. I don't want to brag, no. They did a toy drive for foster children, so that was really nice and well received by their community, and a really nice event. I also wanted to just take a minute and discuss, we did receive, the board received an email from an employee this week, and they raised some questions about addendum, and we were asked, and I just have to get this off my chest, the person that wrote the email did ask the governing board to keep their identity confidential, and it was to the whole board. I did forward the content of it, but I never would have forwarded the person's name, but it did become obvious to me their name was shared, and I would just ask, that the rest of the governing board, and I have no idea who did it, but if an employee communicates to us and asks for information to be confidential, I think we should honor that request so employees and all stakeholders feel comfortable coming to us. We did receive a response on the inquiry and a few things, and I did ask for further clarification. It appears that one of the addendums was for PLC work outside the workday. And I do know of a lot of employees in our district that do PLC work outside the workday that aren't paid addendums, and I did ask why some people would have PLC be a professional responsibility and some people would have PLC work be an addendum, and I think we do need clarification on that, as well as working on school-wide management plans, PBIS, outside the workday. I know all schools have a school-wide management plan, and I'm assuming it takes considerable work from all employees to make that successful, and I'm sure people work outside the workday. So again, my request that we have consistency. I think it's disheartening to employees. And another concern, it appears that some employees receive multiple addendums. So I don't know how much time it would take to fulfill all the addendums outside the workday. So as we look into the addenda process, and I know we've made a lot of, and we continue to make strides, I would just be curious to see if, how many addendums the same employees receiving, and how much work outside the workday it would require for them to fulfill those. Thank you.
Ms. Frank.
I would just like to say I do agree with Ms. Tweedy in terms of working towards a consistency with the addenda, and we are making progress towards that with the new process that was outlined in our previous meeting. I also received the same concerns from the employee, and also noted that while the employee requested confidentiality, that in the response the name was shared, and I did not share that employee's name. I do take, when someone asks for confidentiality, I think it's important to respect that, or we can't expect employees to feel comfortable emailing us with concerns. And also, I had a fabulous time at the Sierra Verde Reindeer Run. Just for the record, it was 10,000 plus steps on my iPhone, so I looked really good on MyFitnessPal on Saturday. And it was great to see the community come together and supporting kids in foster care and providing holiday wishes and toys and clothing for some of our neediest students. So that's it for my report.
I did a totally different thing on Saturday, and it was not sponsored by Deer Valley. However, it spoke to the character of our Deer Valley employees. Every year there is, through ASBO and St. Thomas More does a luncheon for foster kids. And every year, Deer Valley staff are there dedicating their day to these children. It is, and to their families, the parents. It was a day full of crafts and cooking, and Mr. Miglerino was sporting an apron and serving up chicken fingers, my son's favorite. Ernie was there. You see a total different spirit from our staff that comes out, and it just is shows how amazing they really are, and the hearts they have. That they're not getting paid, they're not getting glory, they're not getting anything other than just the joy of serving someone else, and the chicken fingers, yes. If he could give them away, but yes. So it is a wonderful event, and a lot of our Deer Valley employees are involved in it. And besides that, I get to do crafts with kids and pretend I'm like artsy and stuff, so it's a blast. I too was very concerned with the email that we received, and I hadn't really thought about initially how impacting it is that someone would share that email. I do believe it's important that we are asking our employees to email us, and if they say in confidence, which is exactly the words said, in confidence I share, I do think it's important that we honor that. However, I took a different approach rather than just than even asking, even sending the content and asking. I actually started analyzing some of the data based on what I could pull out. The one request I would have is if we get addenda or information, and it always comes in a PDF, it's a lot of work to convert it through Adobe Pro and then get it into Excel, and then I can start messing with it. And I made it through about 5 months looking for those additional, and there's a lot. It's concerning. So I would ask that if there's any way we can get that type of data, even if just in the Friday update or something before it gets turned into a PDF, that would really help to analyze that data and be able to just get an idea of what's happening. We also received, at a later date, or at least I did, information about having the pre-approvals, and is this really a addenda that's even going to occur at a school? And the truth is, as a governing board, we won't know. So we have to rely on the information we're being provided. But when there's a discrepancy, and I don't believe there's any malice aforethought in it. I think a lot of times you plan something here, there's a loss in translation, and it's not being done somewhere else. But I think it's our duty to really look for that consistency, and through this process, we have made a lot of progress. I know it's been a lot of work, but I really think that we need to start with the one thing we have not done, which is defining what is professional responsibility. And professional responsibility for one individual should not be an addenda for a different individual. And you should not get an addenda just for title, because you're in a title or you're in a position if you don't actually do something. So I just hope as we move forward we can take a closer look at that, and a lot of the data that we do need to look at. We will, in our next meeting, going to be discussing some of the different things that Ms. Ordway mentioned. I do think it's very important. In one of our, was it this last Friday update, our Student Rights and Responsibilities Handbook is going to be used by Grand Canyon University for training purposes. And when I first heard that, I said, you've got to be kidding me. And then I went back and I looked at it, and we have a beautiful structure. We have a beautiful way that it's set up. You can see the art of what our employees have put together, but it's the application in the list of our punishments versus, and they are punishments. They're not intended to grow someone, they're punitive. I really hope that we prioritize that in the coming months so that our discipline structure can match the beauty of the overall book. Because I know there's the definition of restorative justice there's a concern with the original theory, but restorative practices, they can't just be written in a book. They have to be put in practice. And if we're just writing them in a beautiful book and someone's teaching off of them, but you to give your kids rules, and your kids say, okay, this is the rule my parents set for me. And then you turn around and you break every single rule you just set for your kids, they're watching you. And so if we set rules, but we're breaking them nonstop, everyone's watching. Not only all the parents and the community, but the kids we're supposed to be teaching, and that's the lesson they're learning. So I really hope that we can prioritize that as a board moving forward, because it's really important for our kids. That's it for me. Oh, and have a great break. I don't know if anybody else who works for a school district is as happy as I am, but I just am counting for that 2 weeks.
Yeah, probably in there.
How many of you guys have a honey-do list that keeps getting longer and longer and longer? And then you start going, you got to prioritize it, because anyway.
Keeps coming.
Yep. Dr. Finch.
Well, in this very room last week, I think it was last week, we had Dad's Literacy Night. I put it on Twitter. I don't know how many, Janet, how many people we ended up with here, but probably 100, maybe more were in here. Parent dads and grandpas and brothers working with kids on different literacy tasks. Got to read if you give a cookie to a mouse to the youngsters, complete with a puppet, with my puppet helper. It turned out nice, and every year it keeps getting bigger and bigger. So this might outgrow this venue here pretty soon. So that was pretty neat to see. Also, in the early childhood wing, we have. I walked in there last week again, saw all of the items that were donated by our staff, and it funnels through the early childhood. 57, maybe 59 families will be impacted by that. So they actually get toys for the kids, food, etc., etc. Sometimes it's even tires for a car. Whatever the family's struggling with, our employees are the ones that step up and fill that gap. So we want to thank our employees for doing that. So, and that's going to make a difference here in our valley. So thanks to our employees. And also just a final reminder that all the plays and concerts and all that stuff here, as you saw this evening, that's all coming in right before the holiday season. So if you have a chance to zoom out and see some of those, it would be worth your while. And I hope everyone has a great break. My mother-in-law is in town and my mother's in town. So, yeah. Somebody's going to be buying lots of dinners. Well, that's it.
President Fisher, members of the board, Dr. Finch. This evening, Janet Zeke, Manager of Early Childhood Programs, and Barb Irvin, Director of Community Education, will share information about programs and resources for our youngest learners.
The Developmental Preschool Program is a federally mandated program for children with special education needs. Developmental preschool services children between the ages of 3 and 5. We currently have 28 classrooms and are located on 21 different campuses throughout the district. Currently, we have 622 students enrolled in developmental preschool classrooms. This number continues to grow as we complete screenings and evaluations throughout the year. Head Start and the Preschool Development Grant are preschool programs that are federally funded for 3 to 5-year-olds based on income eligibility. We have 137 students in our Head Start program and 60 students in the full-day Preschool Development Grant program. This is a total of 819 students between these 3 programs. Child Find is a process to locate, identify, and evaluate all children with disabilities. We hold 11 Child Find screenings throughout the year. We screen approximately 55 children at each screening. If a child requires further evaluation, they are referred to the homeschool campus for a play-based evaluation. We evaluate more than 300 students every school year. After the evaluation is held, the team determines if the child needs special education services. All therapies are provided in the least restrictive environment. This could be in a developmental preschool classroom, Head Start classroom, or PDG classroom. The teachers are utilizing the Big Day curriculum, Sanford Harmony social emotional curriculum, and utilize the Teaching Strategies Gold Assessment System. Research shows that the importance of early intervention, the early childhood years lay the foundation for all future development. Early experiences affect the way the young brain develops. In DVUSD, we provide outstanding services for all our preschool children. We utilize typical peers that serve as role models for our students in the classroom. These students pay tuition to attend the program. The tuition is utilized to purchase all technology, materials, and furniture when we open new classrooms. We also use this money to purchase snacks and all other educational materials for the existing classrooms. Evaluations are being held by each homeschool campus. 221 children have been referred for an evaluation already this year, and we still have 6 more child find screenings to go this school year. This continues to impact the workload of our occupational therapists, physical therapists, psychologists, and speech-language pathologists. With the developmental preschool numbers currently at 622 students at midpoint in the year, we are experiencing difficulty having enough classroom space. An additional class may need to be added in the near future. Due to this increased number of students that we are serving, we have opened 6 new developmental preschool classrooms in the past 5 years. Both Head Start and Preschool Development Grant are federally funded programs. The students attend school for 6.5 hours, 4 days a week, and receive breakfast and lunch at school. The City of Phoenix provides caseworkers and mental health specialists to work with the students and their families. They ensure that the students have access to medical and dental services. We provide ongoing parent trainings and family involvement nights, such as Dad's Literacy Night, Mom's Math Night, and a Family Literacy Book Bingo Night. The teachers utilize the Curiosity Corner curriculum by Success for All. Shared governance is a federal requirement of Head Start. This is the process by which both our governing board and our parent policy of Head Start make key decisions about the program. The parent policy has shared governance with the governing school board. Our parent policy is comprised of current parents and community members. They meet monthly to discuss the Head Start program and to make decisions. The parent policy votes to approve issues that are also voted upon by the governing board. These shared governance items include voting upon the hiring of staff, approving the budget and refunding application, policy committee bylaws, and impasse procedures. We encourage the governing board members to attend the parent policy meetings, which are held on the 3rd Wednesday of each month at 9:30 in the district training lab.
Deer Valley offers a variety of early childhood choices for parents. Another option is our community education, tuition-based general education, inclusive model preschool and pre-K programs for students 3 to 5 years of age. These are self-funded programs that do not have an impact on the district M&O. Of the 16 preschool classrooms, 5 classrooms are located on the Boulder Creek, Mountain Ridge, and O'Connor campuses. These programs work directly with our CTE Advanced Early Childhood Education students. These high school students have the opportunity to plan and teach, gaining valuable workplace experience. The Deer Valley Family Resource Center provides support to strengthen families through workshops and developmentally appropriate activities that encourage parent-child bonding, early literacy, school readiness, and community building. In support of this mission, the center empowers parents and caregivers to become educators themselves and joins in the job of their child's learning during the early developmental years by providing resources and referral information to the families of all 33 DVUSD schools as well as their surrounding communities. The creative curriculum divides child development into 4 areas: social, emotional, physical, cognitive, and language through 38 objectives for learning. The curriculum features exploration and discovery as a way of learning, enabling children to develop confidence, creativity, and critical thinking skills through child-initiated studies. The curriculum offers daily opportunities to individualize instruction to meet the needs of every learner. All of our programs receive training and are implementing the pre-K math curriculum, Eureka Math, in our classrooms to transition our students into our kindergarten classrooms throughout the district. DVUSD received $816,000 for operation of the Head Start program. DVUSD was awarded $350,000 for a preschool development grant. This enabled us to add an additional 20 full-time and 40 half-time PDG slots. We are now available to provide preschool to 100 students that may not have qualified for other preschool programs. The newest classroom opens at Village Meadows next week. Quality First, a signature program of First Things First, funds quality improvements that research proves helps children thrive, such as training for teachers to expand their expertise in working with young children, and coaching to help providers create learning environments that nurture the emotional, social, and academic development of every child. Through our participation, 20 classrooms currently receive stipends for resources, and 7 of the 22 classrooms receive scholarships for students that meet the income eligibility criteria set forth by First Things First, Quality First.
As you can imagine, we are very proud of our early childhood programs and the options that are available for parents when they choose a place to bring their youngest children. We are also very proud of our teachers who provide the social and emotional support as well as that academic preparation that gets them ready for kindergarten. This information report satisfies the Head Start requirements that we need to have satisfied each year. If you'll remember, we had this report for you last January. We were able to get this one in for this next academic year right now. Thank you so very much.
I just have to say the little boy right here with Dr. Finch looks like my grandson. It kind of tugs at the heart. Does anybody have any comments or questions?
Thank you for the report.
Thank you for the report. Mr. Miglerino, you are up next.
President Fisher, members of the board, Dr. Finch. So we have our 2 standard reports to share with you this evening, starting with the student enrollment report. So through the 73rd day of this school year, on November 29th, we're showing a 0.4% reduction, or about 152 students fewer than we had a year ago at this time. Just as a reminder, that is much better than our projection. We were expecting a 1% decline in students, and again, that was due to a larger senior class graduating than the kindergarten class that came in, but we're beating that estimate at the current pace that we have. Remember, current year funding this year, but based on the 100th day, so we still have a little bit of time to go before we see the 100th day number, and certainly just because we get to the 100th day, we won't know exactly what that means in terms of funding, because we have to reconcile all the concurrency in enrollment, because it's not just our information that we have to rely on, it's everybody's information. So I'll pause here to see if there's any questions regarding the student enrollment report. Hearing none, I'll move on to the November financial reports. So the M&O report is here. Not a whole lot to report this evening. So neither good news nor bad news is what I'd like to share with you. We were projecting a carry forward of about $419,000 a month ago. We're at $450,000, so moved slightly positive for us, but not significant. And year over year, we were at $445,000 worth of projected carry forward a year ago. So we're kind of on track, keeping pace with the same projection that we had a year ago, and it improved slightly over the previous month. So I'm happy to answer any questions regarding the November financials.
I move the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to approve the consent agenda with the exceptions of items F and G, which have been removed for separate consideration.
Second.
We do a roll call vote. All those in favor? Ms. Ordway?
Aye.
Ms. O'Brien?
Aye.
Ms. Tweedy?
Aye.
Ms. Frank?
Aye.
I also will vote aye. Move on to
I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to give the administration authorization to enter into additional cooperative purchasing contracts for fiscal year 2017-18.
Second.
Discussion. Ms. Tweedy?
Okay, I had two questions. So the first being, I wanted to clarify the email question I sent, and then, so we aren't going to be in a position, or we're not planning to sell bonds by the end of the school year if the market's still down? I just want to make sure that's not where we're going.
President Fisher, Ms. Tweedy, so we have, as we have communicated to the board, we typically sell bonds after the first of the calendar year. We are currently delaying that due to the high volume of municipal bonds and the turmoil that's in the municipal market right now. And so we have just under $10 million worth of bond proceeds that we have in our possession. So there's no urgent need for us to be in a market that's subjected to this level of turmoil. And so we will need to sell bonds between now and the end of this school year, namely to be able to afford the $7 million worth of improvements that are going to happen at Arrowhead Elementary School. So the $10 million we can use through these months up until, I'd say as late as April. Because that will include some of the costs of the Arrowhead project. We have architects and permitting that happens in front of the construction, but we will not have enough bond proceeds to be able to do the Arrowhead project as well as any other summer improvement projects that are planned for this coming summer. So we will, to answer your question more directly, yes, we will have to sell bonds between now and the end of this school year.
Okay, I'll ask you something. It'll be off the subject, so I'll just send you an email. A follow-up question on that. And then the next thing, I know you've cleared this up for me, but since I was asked this question by a lot of people, so there was concern that we had somebody in an administrative position at the district office who was related to people who do concrete work for us. So can you just clear that, just so everybody can hear the answer I received on this?
Certainly. So President Fisher, Ms. Tweedy, first and foremost, we have a conflict of interest statement. So anybody that would have a direct relative would have to report a conflict of interest. While we don't have any conflict of interest reported within our facilities department for any of the contractors that we're currently using, but I am aware that one of our facilities staff members does perform work for a subcontractor that we occasionally use. We do not contract directly with subcontractors. We contract with general contractors, and the general contractors choose which subcontractors they use. And the reason for that relationship with our current staff member is it's a longtime friend, and this person we hired out of industry has worked with this individual prior to ever even working with the school district. It is just occasional work that happens, typically on weekends when this particular subcontractor might be short on staff, that this person does some side work is what we refer to it as with this particular subcontractor. But again, not somebody that we typically contract directly with.
Thank you for clearing that up.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and call for the vote. Roll call. Ms. Ordway.
Aye.
Ms. O'Brien.
Aye.
Ms. Tweedy.
Aye.
Ms. Frank.
Aye.
And I too will vote aye. Okay, we can do 3G.
I move that the governing board accepts the administration's recommendation to approve the human resources changes.
Second.
Okay, again, discussion. I think several of us have questions on this one. Ms. Tweedy.
So I did send a email to Dr. Galligan, and thank you for getting back to me today. And I know I didn't have time to review the whole board book till this weekend, and you got back to me today, and then I was working, so I'll just follow up now. That's the reason for that. So my first question was, and I'll just read my responses so that you can hear where I'm going. I did ask why the Mandarin teacher is no cost to the district. And Ms. Galligan, Dr. Galligan indicated that as part of our partnership with the ASU Confucius Institute, ASU provides supports for Mandarin immersion program. One of these supports is providing teachers to partner districts. And then I asked who was paying this salary, and Dr. Galligan indicated the Mandarin teacher salary is paid by Hanban, the Chinese Education Ministry. So I guess my first question was, does Hanban have any, or what is the affiliation with Hanban and the Chinese government?
President Fisher, Ms. Tweedy, I can say that the Chinese Education Ministry is who pays that, and I would imagine similar to our Arizona Department of Education, that it has some connection to the government, just like our Arizona Department of Education does, but it is their education ministry.
Okay, so then I guess the next question I asked if this person has a contract with anybody other than Deer Valley, and again, a contract with Hanban. Do we have a copy? Do we know what that contract says? Because I would like to see what their agreement with, obviously, a foreign government would be.
President Fisher, Ms. Tweedy, what we are given is basically a funding agreement, and I had attached that to the email. So what we have on record for us would be that funding agreement, and then we in turn, after going through all of the process for hiring a teacher, would offer a letter of intent. If there is an additional contract, we would need to do some further research for that, but that's something we can certainly do.
Yes, I'll just go on record by saying I'm extremely uncomfortable not understanding what this teacher's agreement with a foreign government, with the influence of a foreign government would be, in that we can't have foreign governments influencing our classroom, so we would just need to understand if that's happening or not. Is it possible for Deer Valley to pay this teacher's salary and this teacher to only have a contract with Deer Valley?
President Fisher, Ms. Tweedy, again, because we have a partnership with ASU and they are able to provide us with additional teachers, they are the ones that give us names to review. Most of the Mandarin teachers that we have do have contracts with us. It's just the Mandarin teachers that ASU is able to give us. We could certainly work with ASU to see if they would like to release the Hanban teachers that they provide partnership districts with a different agreement. We've not asked for that in the past, mainly because these teachers that ASU is able to provide, which are not very many, but usually in a year we will have at least one Hanban teacher work with us at no cost to the district other than the visa.
I mean, it is nice, to save money when we can, but I am extremely uncomfortable about any affiliations with a foreign government without understanding those. And it's not about Mandarin. I mean, if we have a teacher that speaks Mandarin and wants to work in a Mandarin program and wants to have contracts with Deer Valley and not be funded by anyone that has an affiliation with the Chinese government, then I would be way more comfortable with that situation, and that's just me.
Okay.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Okay. I also sent in a similar question to Dr. Finch because my concern too is that it has something to do with the Mandarin program. If we can have a Mandarin teacher teach Mandarin, I have no problem with that. Any immersion program. My concern is that we have a foreign government that is is essentially infiltrating our schools by way of providing teachers, and we don't know what that contract looks like. The first thing I did was went to statute, see if we legally even can, and there is something in statute that says we are to take no action that is against the United States government. And without knowing what that contract is, I don't know that we are honoring that at all. So that was very concerning to me, that a free teacher, anybody that wants to give us a free teacher, it's so hard to find a teacher anyways, that would be great. However, the cost of a free teacher, if it's the infiltration of a foreign government, I have a real problem with that. I know that the way to a nation is through their youth. You know, my church is sponsoring Columbia. We adopt all the children. We put Bibles in their hands. We teach them. It's done. It's done with a lot of countries in a lot of directions. But it's our duty to hold our kids, and without seeing that contract and knowing what it is, I just could not ever turn my back on my country. So that's just very concerning to me as well. I need to see what that contractual obligation to the Chinese government is. Ms. Ordway and then Ms. Frank.
Dr. Galligan, if you, and actually Dr. Finch, I guess is just broadly speaking, I've been to enough meetings now where I will hear other board members talk about, you know, they send an email and here's the response. I sent an email. I'm going to ask that these emails that have questions like this be forwarded with answers to the rest of the board. It just makes it where this part of the meeting could maybe be more efficient. So there are how many districts in the state of Arizona, in Maricopa County itself, that also are part of the Confucius Classroom, that do also beg to get the teacher that is paid by Hanban. We do not make a contract with the teacher. We are getting funding from the Confucius Classroom, which is part of the beauty of it, that we're not doing any of the actual, there's degrees of separation. So if it is possible, perhaps also, and I can't remember what her name is anymore, from the Department of Education, that then looks at the visas and then will put the stamp of approval on their education so they can be in the classroom, so on and so forth. All of that would be kind of interesting for all of us to have. I don't see that, personally, being involved with this since its inception. I've never witnessed, and I'm not in a classroom every day, but I've never witnessed any kind of foreign government infiltration. If anything, the teachers that we do get try to stay, and they become very Americanized. So we are giving them as much from our culture as their culture is giving to us. And as we call ourselves a district that is trying to prepare our students for the global world, before we jump to conclusions or out loud say that we don't want to be infiltrated with a foreign government, I think maybe some of that information might be helpful. And that's all for now.
Ms. Frank.
So it sounds like there's several layers here. We have a direct relationship with ASU's Confucius Institute. And please correct me if I'm misunderstanding this. Then ASU has the relationship with Hanban. Is that okay? So how are the teachers that come from mainland China selected? Maybe you could explain how that process works, because it sounds like we're not directly dealing with Hanban, which does have ties to the People's Republic of China Ministry of Education. And just as we wouldn't say our Department of Education is affiliated with the government, it's part of our government, I would assume that that is also part of their government. So perhaps if you could explain how that process works.
President Fisher, Ms. Frank, we are talking about two very different things. So ASU's Confucius Institute is, as I mentioned before, able to provide for multiple years now to their partner districts some teachers that they have vetted themselves, who are then offered to a school district from ASU. Once we have a teacher offered to us from ASU's Confucius Institute, then we are able to interview and make a decision if we feel that teacher will fit one of the openings or one of the schools where we offer Mandarin. If after that point we've made a decision that this teacher would be a good fit, then they still have to be screened through the U.S. visa sponsorship company that provides the visa for them to be in the United States. So there is multiple layers of vetting of a particular teacher that ASU Confucius Institute is going to offer us. We, at any point in time, can say thank you, no, for that particular teacher if we don't feel they're a good fit, or if we don't feel that they are doing what we would want them to do as far as being a match for either high school or elementary or specials. But ASU is very good with working with us, and of course there are other partner districts in allowing us to make those types of decisions when they've offered us a teacher.
So that explains how the teacher comes from ASU to Deer Valley.
Mm-hmm.
How does the teacher arrive to ASU from China or from Hanban?
Well, or are they all from China?
President Fisher, Ms. Frank, I would need to speak with ASU's Confucius Institute director just to find out exactly how that process works, and we can get that information hopefully before winter break, but if not, immediately after, and I'll provide that for you in the next update that it's available.
Nice.
I do want to note a couple things. I do want to note that the email question that was submitted was responded to and emailed to the entire board. So, I mean, I appreciate the desire to have it, but as soon as, because I didn't even know it had been asked until I received the email from administration that this question had been asked, and here's the response to the questions that had been answered in an email as of the last moment. The questions, the board book is released Friday evening, and so the questions come, and as soon as they, I just have to actually commend our administration, because as they are getting those questions, they are sending them out to the whole board. If it bumps right up to the meeting, it may be that one of us gets something that the others don't, and that's why it sounds to me like it was brought forward. I really would appreciate it if they would kind of let us know if we could find out, because it's the unknown. It is our job as a governance board, a governance team, to ensure that what we are doing is best for our students. And I think the Chinese culture is fascinating. I think it's wonderful. I think a lot of cultures are wonderful. And I absolutely support them sharing with us and us sharing with them. As being multicultural it's just invaluable. But I still think we have a responsibility when it comes to ensuring the safety and security of our students nationally, especially in such a day of, you can't turn on the TV anymore without something happening somewhere to someone. And so I just think we have to be responsible with that.
The if I can comment on the emails, my general philosophy is to, anytime a question comes, to send it usually out through a Thursday update. Time might be the enemy, and so it's possible that we could have made a mistake, but in general, we want to give every question out to everyone. That's what we try to do, so if we made a mistake, sorry about that, we'll double check.
That was just a wish or a want.
Yep.
Not,
I agree,
was
totally
not,
agree.
Trying to
Yep.
make anyone,
A well-informed board
anyone under the bus.
makes a big
I
difference.
just need to know
Yep.
What I think we all need to know so we can, our meetings can then move
It's
more
possible, though,
efficiently.
that we might have made a mistake here. That's
A-
fine.
And I
can
could have
double
missed
check.
it too, but, you know, I'm just saying.
Ms. O'Brien?
Thank you. I would like to second the request that we get the information on the Mandarin program and those relationships with the various entities in an update, so if there are additional questions. But I also would like to go back to Dr. Galligan, your explanation regarding the teachers, and that once a teacher is interviewed and selected by Deer Valley as, yes, we would like this teacher, did I hear you correctly say that they then go through the process, like, is it through the the U.S. government and have a visa, get their visa? Or did I misunderstand?
President Fisher, Ms. O'Brien, once we made the decision that we would like to have that particular teacher join us, then we work through a visa company, as does that particular individual. And the process that is part of that immigration background check is part of what the visa company does. And it is a fairly detailed one. I'll add that also as far as what the visa company responsibilities are to the information that will come over the next few weeks.
So that visa company is then getting all that information, doing those background checks so that we can then get the visa from the United States government, so that the United States government is basically giving them the stamp of approval to come here and work.
President Fisher, Ms. O'Brien, that is very much correct. It's very difficult in many times for us to have all the teachers that we would like, because the visa companies are very detailed in what they look for and take their time to make sure that the information that they're getting is accurate.
Thank you for providing additional information, Dr. Galligan.
Just 1 second, then I'll go. So what is the time frame? So if you approve the selection of a Mandarin teacher, then you start the process. Then the visa company does theirs. By the time it gets through the federal government, what does that time frame look like? Could we have had our children in a classroom for a year without it going through the federal government? So that would be good, is to have windows of what that looks like.
President Fisher, the visa companies can take anywhere from weeks to months. The teacher does not start with us until we have approval from the visa company. They cannot start, and we will not start them until that approval has been given to us from the visa company.
Ms. Tweedy, and then Ms. Frank.
I would just ask my fellow governing board members. I think the issue here is we would be hiring somebody that has a contract with Hanban. We don't have that contract. We don't know what the terms of that contract are, but we're going to approve this anyway in our district. I mean, I think that's problematic. It's not doing our due diligence. We can't approve someone to work here who is operating under a contract we don't have access to, so we don't know the terms of their contract, but we do know it's affiliated with a foreign government. I just think that should raise a red flag with the governing board. So at the very least, we would need to see that contract before we could entertain approving it, or at least I would hope other people would have a problem with that. Thank you.
Frank?
I would, there's enough controversy surrounding Hanban currently, and a number of universities that have actually pulled their Confucius Institute programs. So I would need to see what the relationship is and what the contract looks like before I can't approve a contract I haven't seen. In good conscience, I can't.
One final question. You said you would not start them until they've gone through that process. I show an effective date of 11/29. Have they already gone through that process?
President Fisher, we've received the visa company's approval for this particular individual.
So can we, I again, I am with Ms. Tweedy and Ms. Frank that I just believe we need to see that contract. And know that, just know that our students are, or that our, that we are not stepping outside of, there is a lot of controversy out there, from what I saw. It's only been a couple days. It's kind of hard to do a lot of research, when you still have to sleep and go to work. But, I am just very concerned that we need to do a little bit more due diligence, and then bring it back. It would be my preference. But I would really not want the entire item to fail. Ms. O'Brien.
A couple of my fellow board members have referred to controversy and some research, and I would just ask that if you have some research, could you please share it through Dr. Finch to come in the Friday update that highlights those concerns. And then I would also agree with you, Mrs. Fisher, that I wouldn't want the entire HR changes to be held up. So I move to approve the human resource changes and table the Mandarin teacher from Boulder Creek High School until the next meeting.
Okay,
I
so
think you have to amend the motion, and then
I move to amend the motion to table Boulder Creek High School Mandarin teacher to the next meeting, a meeting in January that is workable.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All is in favor of modifying the motion? Ms.
Aye.
Ordway?
Aye.
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 Okay, that was Ordway, O'Brien, Tweedy, and then Frank, and I as well will vote aye. And can I get a vote on the motion that is standing now? Ms. Ordway?
Aye.
Ms. O'Brien?
Aye.
Ms. Tweedy?
Aye.
Ms. Frank?
Aye.
And I too will vote aye.
And just to Ms. O'Brien, I did share research with Dr. Finch quite some time ago.
I just started Googling this weekend, but anything I find I will send as well.
So I have no problem with it being
The research,
shared.
you could probably Google it and pick it up. That's how probably is the easiest way to do it. But I will find it and get it out to everyone.
Thank you.
Yep.
Let's move on to, we have action item 4A.
For the action part. Sorry. I move that the governing board approve professional travel for superintendent to attend the AASA National Conference on Education in Nashville, Tennessee for February 14th through 17th, 2018.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote. Ms. Ordway?
Aye.
Ms. O'Brien?
Aye.
Ms. Tweedy?
Aye.
Ms. Frank?
Aye.
And I will too vote aye. And if anyone wants to privately sponsor me to go to that conference, it looks really good. So, just saying. Go on to employee travel. By item, because it's what
Item.
we've been doing.
Okay. I move that the governing board approve out-of-state travel trip A, math curriculum specialist high school to middle school math conference in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
I do have a question.
Ms. Frank?
So I believe we approved already to send 2 curriculum specialists to this conference. Am I remembering that correctly?
President Fisher, Ms. Frank, that would be correct.
Okay.
Ms. Reyes is the high school curriculum specialist. The other 2 are K-8.
Okay. And this is a middle school math conference.
Ms. Reyes oversees 7th through 12th grade, and then Ms. Edelson and Ms. Villalobos are pre-K-8. There's an overlap over middle school.
Okay. Anyone else have a question?
Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Ms. Ordway?
Aye.
Ms. O'Brien?
Aye.
Ms. Tweedy?
Nay.
Ms. Frank?
Nay.
I'm really on the fence with this one because there are so many going. However, leading a team when you don't know what the team is doing is extremely difficult, and so I will vote aye.
I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation for employee travel trip B, National Title I Conference.
Second.
Any questions? Seeing none, I'm going to call for the vote. Ms. Ordway?
Aye.
Ms. O'Brien?
Aye.
Ms. Tweedy?
Aye.
Ms. Frank?
Aye.
I will vote aye as well.
I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation employee travel trip C, International Baccalaureate Conference Workshop in San Diego.
Sorry. Second.
Seeing no questions, I'll call for the vote. Ms. Ordway?
Aye.
Ms. O'Brien?
Aye.
Ms. Tweedy?
Aye.
Ms. Frank?
Aye.
I too will vote aye.
I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation employee travel trip D, ASCD Empower 18 Conference in Boston, Massachusetts.
Second.
Seeing any questions? Seeing none. Ms. Ordway?
Aye.
O'Brien?
Aye.
Ms. Tweedy?
Aye.
Ms. Frank?
Aye.
I too will vote aye.
I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation employee travel trip E, APBS Conference, San Diego, California.
Second.
Seeing no questions. Ms. Ordway?
Aye.
Ms. O'Brien?
Aye.
Ms. Tweedy?
Aye.
Ms. Frank?
Aye.
I will too vote aye.
I move the governing board accept the administration's recommendation employee travel trip F, professional development for annual Tyler Tech Visions Conference, Boston, Massachusetts.
Second.
I have one comment. I'm jealous because Tyler technology is killing me. But I will call for the vote. Ms. Ordway?
Aye.
Ms. O'Brien?
Aye.
Ms. Tweedy?
Aye.
Ms. Frank?
Aye.
I will also vote aye.
I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to approve employee travel trip G, EFI Print Smith Users Conference, Las Vegas, Nevada.
Second.
Seeing no questions, I'll call for the vote. Ms.
Aye.
Ordway? Ms. O'Brien?
Aye.
Ms. Tweedy?
Aye.
Ms. Frank?
Aye.
I will also vote aye. And that is the last one, but I would ask, are we making any progress with getting the voting thing so I don't have to? All right, let's move on to the salary and benefit study.
I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to approve the salary and benefit study to Heinfield Meach and Company, PC, for $32,500.
I will second. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, Ms. Ordway?
Aye.
Ms. O'Brien?
Aye.
Ms. Tweedy?
Aye.
Ms. Frank?
Aye.
I will vote aye also.
Item 4D, I move that the governing board approve the addition of a community education secretary position.
Second.
Any discussion? Ms. Frank?
I do have, I guess a concern. I know that I did read the rationale and we certainly do get a lot of benefit from the community ed program and so on. I guess my concern is that we also had requests last year for additional office staff at various schools, and I'm wondering if it might be more appropriate to delay this until the budget committee and the NST committee have had a chance to look at where our budget priorities are rather than approving another expenditure, unless I'm misreading this.
Okay, can I just make one comment and then Ms. Ordway? I also have a question so we can get it all at the same time, and it was because one of the documents I know was old and we had the 9 positions, so this would equal 10 positions in that department. Is that correct?
President Fisher, we believe it is 10.
Okay. Then my other comment that I want to state is that this is out of the monies that they earn and bring into the district, correct?
President Fisher, that is correct. It is not an M&O impact at all. It is funded by community education.
So it would not be relevant to the budget committee work.
That is correct.
And then my last question is, do we know, I know it's grown significantly. Do we know, do we have a percentage of growth since the last position was added? Because the program has exploded, but do we know?
So, President Fisher, in the information that we shared, I can figure that out mathematically. But in 2004, we had $750,000 of revenue. 2012, 5 years ago, it was $7,100,000, and currently this year, this past year, it was $7,600,000. So from beginning to end, we can get that percentage, and as well as from the last time a position was added, we can work on that and have that for you in this Thursday's update.
Just a rough estimate. What is it? What are we at? 20%, 30%? Sorry, I just don't
President
have.
Fisher, the quick math on the 750 to 7.6 million is tenfold.
Yeah.
From
But I'm
04 to
talking about
17.
Yeah, a little bit closer than those two. Okay. Ms. Ordway had, and then Ms. Tweedy.
Yes, I did. One of the questions was where the funding comes from. And Dr. Galligan, perhaps you've had a few conversations with Barb Irvin about how much more efficiently and perhaps more business she could do if she wasn't exploding the rest of her employees with all of that work. Because I know that this has been for years that they've been looking for someone. I know each year that the answer is no. They don't stop. So perhaps you could share some of that conversation.
President Fisher, Ms. Ordway, community education continues to expand in offering programs and resources for our community, our families, and even outside of our families, as well as our students. The addition of, I would say, our early entry kindergarten and first grade is another opportunity and resource that community education provides us as a district, as well as our families. The expansion of our before and after school programs that have expanded to the Thanksgiving break, the winter break, the spring break, and of course the large summer programs that we offer beyond childcare but into the enrichment programs have continued to expand each year. When we look at the enrichment opportunities after school that our schools are able to provide, our schools offer more through community education than they have every year going forward. When we look at programs for our students with driver's education and SAT preparation, those also are programs that continue to grow as kids and families choose to partake. So the work that our early in 2004 program provided, you can't even put your arms around how large that program has expanded for our community and our schools. But we can list what we have grown with over the years so that you can see where we have added. And they have not truly added staffing in many, many years. Ms. Ordway, I hope that may have.
Yeah, it did, because I know that this has been worked on, and we had at one time done a comparison with Tempe's and so on and so forth, and they have many more employees, many more employees. Oh, that's right, because we only have one. I'm just kidding, we have two. That do those jobs. So I'm very excited for this to happen at some point, maybe tonight. Thank you.
Ms. Tweedy.
So, it's not really for me about whether community ed needs a secretary or not, but it's kind of to Ms. Frank's point. I think the one thing I somewhat find a little bit offensive when we discuss community ed is the notion that they make their own money, so their staffing needs should be addressed. Our transportation department, well, you know, they can't charge people for riding the bus, so we won't really address their staffing needs. And our schools, you know, the register has to register students for free, so we don't really need to address their staffing needs. The truth of the matter is, community ed is a cash account. It's a cash account that can be used to balance the budget, and perhaps their secretary priority is more of a need, but I'm just saying we haven't had anybody look at it to make that determination, a budget committee or anything else. I don't think the notion that they're self-funded, so therefore they should be staffed better than the schools who provide education with the reimbursement. I mean, we could turn this around and say, if community ed didn't have access to the students that attend the district, I think their money would go down quite a bit. So it's actually both sides of it working together is the reason community ed even makes a profit. So I mean, possibly their secretary is the priority over other schools who feel they're short-staffed, and possibly it's not. But I do think if we're doing job studies and we're having a budget process, we should honor the process and let those people make the decision. And I don't think making the argument that because one department is self-funded, that they should be treated or staffed differently. I'm sorry, that's just not equitable.
I just because I feel the need to respond. I don't believe any of us think that transportation shouldn't be funded because they don't earn their own money or that. But the reality is, if we have the ability to grow, if you have the ability to have growth, which will bring in additional revenue that can be used to balance the budget, I think it's our obligation to do so. Putting a cell tower on one of our sites is going to cost us, but we're not, and then they're going to pay rent. We're not going to refuse the cost of putting the cell tower because we don't have a bus. It's apples and oranges. I think we're driving the revenue. If I'm understanding correctly, what we're trying to do is provide the support so we can continue to drive the revenue. And so I don't want the impression, I don't want anyone to believe that if your department isn't bringing in money, we're not going to fund you. But I firmly believe we have to take measures to drive revenue because the legislature's not going to give us any. Sorry, Ms. O'Brien, then Ms. Tweedy. I'm just going the order the hands came up.
Well, mine was up, but
Yeah,
it's okay.
well, if you were before Ms. O'Brien, I just saw hers first.
No, Miss O'Brien goes, and I just wanted to point something out when she's done. Short.
Ms. Tweedy, to your point, they are cash accounts, and we do use them to help pay for things we need in this district. I agree, and I'm hoping that Mr. Miglerino can give us a rough idea of how much money we used from community ed in last year's budget, and I apologize for putting you on the spot like that, Mr. Miglerino.
No apology necessary. President Fisher, Ms. O'Brien, $500,000 in just last year, and it's been it was $1 million in 2013-14, $1.5 million in 2014-15, and then $500,000 in both 15-16 and 17-18.
Okay, thank you. So I think it is important for us to consider this expenditure as an investment in that program so that they can continue to expand and increase those revenues so that we will continue to have the funds we've had and hopefully additional funds so that we can continue to meet some of the or I shouldn't say continue to meet, so that we can meet some of the unmet needs in our district. I don't think that there's anybody that would say that, you know, we are overstaffed at our schools, or that we're putting this person in this position or giving this position to this department because they're more deserving. It's an opportunity to increase those funds and hopefully be able to meet needs that we have within the district that we can't currently meet. This has come up more than once, and so I would ask my fellow board members to please consider voting for this. Thank you.
Ms. Ordway and then Ms. Tweedy, and then I think Ms. Frank.
It really isn't meant to be an argument. The question was, does it have an impact on the budget? It doesn't. So therefore, it wouldn't be part of a budget discussion. And we don't and never have staffed community ed in any way, shape, or form that we staff anything else. So that wouldn't be really in the NST meeting. And your laughter right now, I could almost take as disrespectful, but I'm going to let it slide. So when we have a department that services not only community members that don't go to our school, but also is there for our employees, I think that having a secretary for a department that has the ability to balance our budget and to provide other employees with raises, where there have been studies for 3, 4, maybe even 5 years, stating that it is necessary, that we should really look at it and think about investing in a department that has helped us balance our budget for every year that I've been on this board.
I believe Ms. Tweedy or Ms. Frank was next, and then I know I just said that just now, but I had already said Ms. Frank. So unless you want to defer to Ms. Tweedy. Okay. Okay.
Thank you. Sorry, I didn't mean to laugh. You were being condescending in your tone, and I just laughed, but that's okay. All righty then. Having to say that cash account's not part of the budget, it just kind of just took me back. But I'm not saying we shouldn't have a secretary if they can't grow without one. I'm simply saying we've put processes in place to establish our priorities. So if we put processes in place to establish our priorities, I think we should honor the processes we put in place to establish our priorities. And if that comes up a priority at the budget meeting, which is separate from the NST, then I think we should consider it. Thanks.
Ms. Frank.
So I guess my next question is, how would an additional secretary, what growth do you expect from the addition of another position? So do you have specific plans for specific programs at that additional secretary, some type of estimate of the additional funds or monies that could be realized as a result? Knowing that would help me make a decision.
President Fisher and Mrs. Frank, we had hoped to show that we would continue to expand both the before and after school programs, our early childhood programs, the enrichment programs. All of those programs have particular schools that they're attached to, and if we're able to expand to additional campuses, that would be great. In addition, the few campuses that are in that Norterra Canyon, Sonoran Foothills corridor that we have wait lists for in before and after school programming, if we can add to those particular programs to grow them larger for our families, we would certainly do that. Efficiency, just plain old efficiency in that department would also be one of the goals for this particular position. And we know we're doing an efficiency study for other areas, but we know that we are not as efficient as we could be because we have a director of that department doing clerical chronos reports. So the efficiency that we would gain from that particular position would allow that director to be out in the programs as well as overseeing multiple areas that certain times every month and actually every week are spent in clerical tasks.
Do you have specific campuses or numbers of classrooms? I mean, is there a plan, or is it more of a, we could expand 2 more campuses if we had additional clerical help? I'm just wondering if there was like a specific plan that's been thought of.
President Fisher, Ms. Frank, I would indicate, and I would have to follow Ms. Irvin's lead, but we know that our corridor up Norterra Canyon, Sonoran Foothills up through Sunset Ridge is a necessary area for us to impact wait lists as well as parents who want to be in programs that we have not been able to expand. As far as something specific, I can get that for you in either this Thursday's update or the following week's update. That way you can see further. But as far as right at this moment, I don't have that.
Okay, thank you.
I just have one more clarification. Now, the one document that's attached is old, so we have not reclassed any of those positions. We still have 6 clerks, not 4. We have 1 classified. Sorry, I don't have it up to look at it. When you did the timeline for us. Okay, maybe it's not one that's out here, one of the ones that you had sent us in the Friday update. We still have the old model. None of it was reclassed, correct?
President Fisher, that is correct.
Okay. I do have one question for the director of the program, if I may.
Certainly.
As an administrator of a fairly expansive program that is district-wide out at the campuses, and I'm fishing here simply because I know I go to work at first thing in the morning, and sometimes I leave the office at 9 o'clock at night, mostly because I am also doing those clerical duties because I too do not have, I've been denied expansion of staff. Reading through what this individual will be doing, if we don't fill that position, who does all that?
I do. I have a big enough workload on the staff that I have, the 2 program supervisors, our enrichment specialist, our facilities specialist, and then the account reps who handle the payments and collections, that I can't put any more on them. So therefore, we have over 180 Chronos and ASOP that I do. I try to facilitate all the agendas, everything like that. Anything that they need help with, I do. My job, like everybody else's, starts from the minute I wake up with the iPhone next to me to the time that I go to bed and the hours here. I'm not complaining. I don't want a personal secretary. I think that as a person who's running a business to make money for the district, when I look at some of the tasks that I'm doing, not that I'm above doing any of them, but that I could be doing bigger picture items for the superintendent and for Dr. Galligan if I had the time. And as you know, over the 12 years that I've worked here, that I have expanded, and I would continue to expand because it's my love and my joy, and I love Deer Valley. So it's not.
Are you also doing the evaluations?
Yes.
Okay, how many evaluations are you doing?
I directly oversee about 25 of them, and then another 23 that are
Dotted line supervisor? Okay. I would just ask my fellow board members, my children sat down and calculated my hourly rate, and they said, Mom, you realize you make less than minimum wage with the hours you put in working those 15-hour days. When you are running a large department and you don't have that support, then you do it however you can, whenever you can, and without the ability to truly take the big picture and expand, sometimes things that could be great are okay. And I think that, excuse my language here, I think community education is a cash cow for us. And if we don't allow it to expand because you're so overwhelmed with Chronos and going in each employee line item and verifying their time and then doing their evaluations and going on, we cannot innovate without that type of support. So I would ask that my fellow board members consider supporting this. That is just my take on it. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and call for the vote. Ms. Ordway.
Aye.
Ms. O'Brien.
I'd like to vote last.
Okay. Ms. Tweedy.
Nay.
Ms. Frank.
Aye, but with the caveat that I would like a follow-up to learn how the program has been expanded as a result of funding this position. I think as a board member, that's a fair request.
So that was an aye?
That was an aye.
Okay. Ms. O'Brien. Unless you want me to go first, because I'm going to vote aye as well. So, Ms. O'Brien.
Aye.
4-0. Or 4-1. Let's go ahead and go on to... I got lost.
It's 4E. I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to pre-approve the addenda as presented.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on the addenda at this time? Now, this is the pre-approval addenda. Okay, is there any
I did have a
Ms.
question,
Frank?
Really more of an observation. I did notice as I was looking through all of the addenda, and again, I'd like to thank the administration for the new streamlined process. Well, maybe it's not streamlined for you, but the new process that's been, Jim's going, yeah, no, not streamlined. I did notice that we have a lot of addenda for the Deer Valley online program to the tune of, I think it was around $85,000 if I added it all up correctly before the meeting on my iPhone. And so if that figure's incorrect, we'll blame the iPhone. So I'm just kind of curious how that is broken out. Is that broken out separately as a budget item in the budget process? Is that something we might want to consider as the program seems to be expanding and we are spending more money on that? Is that... help me understand how that all fits in.
Yeah, President Fisher, Ms. Frank, great question. So what is represented here, just to make sure, because this is new, and I'm embarrassed to say I see a couple typos that we can improve on the process, right? We can at least fix the typos. But what you're seeing here is both spring and summer pre-approval. So we asked them to try and get as many of these in place as possible. But to answer your question more specifically, we have two funding sources for our online program. We do have a dollar amount of M&O that we assign, and I believe it's $370,000 of M&O that we assign to the online program. And then they have their own revenue that they generate from tuition that they charge for students. So both of those sources are what would fund the cost of all the addenda positions that you would see here. And again, this is just spring and summer. There would be, I won't say the equivalent number in the fall, probably a fewer addenda in the fall because you wouldn't have the summer addenda, which is a growing.
Right, they haven't all failed their classes yet and
Correct.
signed up for the summer. I know that sounds, sorry if that sounds a little snarky. So do we know or have we looked at how much the program is bringing in versus how much money is going out versus how much money we're bringing in, and are we breaking even on that? Would be good information to have.
Yeah, and so we do, for the M&O portion, we do receive revenue specifically for what the state refers to as AOI students. They're not funded at the same dollar amount as other students. So there's a factor that's put in place that reduces the amount of funding that we receive from them. But we do look at the amount of money that they generate. It's that information, a lot of that information, again, because there is a higher propensity of those students in the spring and summer, and they have a year-round calendar, so their 100th day can be any day within the 100 days of a 365-day calendar.
Day now.
Well, it could be today and tomorrow, right? Depending on it being a different person. So we have to wait to the end of the year to be able to know exactly how much ADM they actually generate. But we do look at that at the end of the year to see exactly how much it generated. But it's always an autopsy, right? It's always in arrears that we know that information, because it takes for all the concurrency to be resolved for us to know exactly how many students generated additional funding. The only other caveat that I should disclose is it's sometimes difficult. We don't report every online student through the AZ Eds program because they are funded for, because the state would reduce the funding if we were to report them. Any student that takes more than 4 classes in a high school setting qualifies as a full-time student. So we report all of the brick and mortar classes and do not report the online classes, because the state would then make that student concurrent within our own system and pay us a fraction of that, of the FTE earned for that student. So we would receive less funding. So we intentionally don't report all the ADM for the online program, because it would be a detriment. But we do look at how much ADM is generated from the program. It's not all of the students that take the classes.
Okay, thank you.
You just gotta love the formula, I just have to say. One question that I did have, because this is a projection, correct, of what we're expecting, and is this based on what we did last year? It is. Okay. Because one of the concerns I have is if we approve or pre-approve a projection, I just want to ensure that we are still going to look at, like if we have something in here that is an addenda here but not at there or there or there, but it is here, that we're still going to continue to look for those consistencies and that ensure, because if I don't want to approve a projection at, I don't know, Deer Valley High School, and then Kim Crooks decides, well, no, I'm not using that. I'm going to do something different. And then Boulder Creek says, well, yeah, I'm doing it. And so we're having that inconsistency. I just want to make sure that we're honoring all of our employees. It's just a pre-approval, but we're still going to continue our process of looking to ensure that it's professional duty versus addenda and consistent across the way.
President Fisher, most definitely the answer is yes. This will be not the only time you'll see these. Of course, they will be coming back for approval with the name and the actual amount. We've provided a budget amount for what you see on the pre-approval. The consistency, I think, is going to be more the benefit of getting the job description assigned for each addenda. And so we're already seeing some benefits of having that be a requirement in the process. And it might even also substitute for the pre-approval process. But in the interim, we wanted to make sure the board knew everything that we were at least planning to do. I don't know that this generates any consistency other than you can see the differences in this pre-approval process of where there may be an imbalance between a particular school. And I just want to make sure that you're clear, or that we're clear on what we have instructed to the schools, that with the pre-approval, again, pending the outcome of the board's decision on the pre-approvals this night and any future night for that matter, that would allow them to fill those positions, and then we would ratify. But in no event would we allow them to start an addenda work without having at least pre-approval from the board.
Okay.
So this does at least flip a switch in the process that allows them to at least try and start to fill these positions once the board makes a final determination. And if there's Since this is an evolving process, we would appreciate any feedback on how we might be able to better present this. If you guys want us to, I'm sorry for being so informal, if it would be better served to provide some subtotals by location or something of that nature, we can certainly provide that. We're building this as we're refining and changing the process, and would welcome any input from the board.
My preference would be that it's in Excel, because then I can look at it that way. And then understanding your account code is your site, the last three.
Correct. I'm sorry, President Fisher, the unit code at the very end, the last 3 digits of the, so the actual school or distributed account code, DAC, that Divisions uses, also provides some information. The reason for the account code, it really identifies the funding source. With Fund 1 being typically a department budget or school-based budget, and that could include the CIT or CIP funds, and then some of the other funds that you're going to see there being some of their cash accounts, whether they're tax credits, student activities, et cetera.
Right. But I'm just saying, if it's in Excel, I can do that part. So for me, that would be good. I don't know about other board members, what they would prefer to see, but I would ask that we all submit that. My last question is, we received, or I received additional information. I don't want to speak for anyone else because I don't know what anyone else has, that positions may be on this list to be approved if they don't actually exist at a campus. And then someone's just put in them, but there's not an additional change. So I did kind of go back and start looking at historically, because we've been talking about this for quite a while as I went looking back. And we did have job descriptions even back then. I want to say like maybe 6 months ago, maybe not as detailed. Are the new job descriptions going to be more detailed? Is that the reason? Is that the reason that's going to make that impact, that difference? Because I did see job descriptions from way back in like February that were in my records.
President Fisher, so not every addenda has a job description. So we do have some that have job descriptions. They all are being updated onto a new format that requires some of the specific duties to be outlined. And it is our intention to be able to draw a direct line of sight to those additional responsibilities as part of some of the questions that have been brought up regarding addenda by the board and others, quite frankly. So it's the fact that not all job descriptions existed. In fact, I would think it'd be the exception, not the norm, or the majority. I don't think the majority of addenda had a job description, but we do have a new format as well to outline the specific job responsibilities that should be outside of their normal responsibilities. That's the consistency, I think, that has been addressed this evening and in previous
that makes
conversations.
sense. Yeah, because there was some, but it wasn't all of them. That makes sense. Any other questions? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Ms. Ordway.
Aye.
Ms. O'Brien.
Aye.
Ms. Tweedy.
Aye.
Ms. Frank.
Aye.
I will also vote aye.
I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to approve the addenda contracts in the attached listing.
Second.
Any concerns? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Ms. Ordway.
Aye.
Ms. O'Brien.
Aye.
Ms. Tweedy.
Aye.
Ms. Frank.
Aye.
I will also vote aye. Okay. Discussion item. We have the first board survey. At our, I think it was our July retreat, maybe it was August, it was July, I think. We discussed in part of our communication plan that we had wanted to do not a lot of surveys because we don't want to overwhelm the district as a whole, but we did discuss doing a few surveys that were done by the board, managed by the board, brought before the board, just so that we could gather our own information and ask some questions. The superintendent's office did in fact submit a requisition, and we do have a purchase order for SurveyMonkey. I didn't want to set it up until we knew that we had a survey that we wanted to do, because once you set it up, then it's going to send a bill, and we have 12 months to use that annual membership. So I wanted to bring it before the board so that we can either discuss now, or if you guys would prefer to get ideas, think about what you would potentially want to survey, maybe something we do in January, and that we set up the account at that time. All board members will have whatever the password is set up as, we'll all have it. We can all get in there and look. None of us, unless they've changed SurveyMonkey from the last time I used it, none of us will have the ability to change the information that's in there, because it's somebody else's information's in it. But we'll all have the ability to get it down and look at it. And then perhaps when we can bring it, whatever our survey is, to future meeting or future study sessions, we discuss what it is we wanted to do. So I just wanted input from the board what they wanted to do with this.
Well, I would say that whatever it is we're going to do, maybe we could wait till January. We've got a new year ahead of us. We'll have one semester behind us. Dr. Finch will have a semester, under his belt. And perhaps we could, really concentrate, laser focus on something that is very important for the public to know, that the governing board is surveying them, and be really laser focused in what that is, so we don't saturate and then lose that importance when they get something from us going, I'm not filling that out, it's them. So I think January might be a better time to look at something like that.
So to that point, because that's what we were thinking of, was January, but does the board want to just form ideas and submit them into Dr. Finch? How do we want to handle that? Ms. Tweedy, I'll let you answer and then, or ask and then
Well, I just had one thought, and you guys can think about it, and then when we come back, but we have a list of, or at least I have a list, you have a list, we've made agenda requests based on things people have mentioned to us that is upsetting to them, or the parents want to address. It could be boundaries, it could be bullying, it could be the handbook, it could be drug prevention. I would just like to maybe send out a list of topics we've heard about that we know the community does want us to address, and have them rank them for us so that we can see what they perceive that they would want us to. We are never going to get through every request we've had between now and May. And so, I mean, we do our best to, but I would like to hear from the public what they perceive. I mean, what they definitely want addressed by May, and it might help us in deciding how to prioritize our agenda request.
Ms. Frank? No? Okay, I just saw you pushing buttons. Oh, okay. So this isn't intended to be a long discussion. My preference would be that we all submit some kind of idea to Dr. Finch's office, that this is what we're interested in doing and the time frame we're looking at, that we would like to do it, so that we come back after the break and we're prepared to, because there is a lot to do. We won't get it all done in a school year. And but I think if we all get a consensus and we can move forward on something, it would be really great, because we've committed to having a communication program, or a communication process, and we've committed to being open and communicating with our public and our employees, and I think that we should honor that. So that's just my take. Okay, public participation. We do have one comment. Glenn Milner, did I slaughter your name? I'm sorry if I did. So if you can just hold on a moment, Ms. Frank will read you the admonishment, and then if you could state your name for the record. Okay, thank you.
All right, the board invites public comment on the district's business in general and on any agenda item in specific. All speakers must observe the rules of decorum. Speakers must fill out a card listing name, address, and topic and hand it to the board secretary prior to the president calling the meeting to order. Speakers must make their comments in no more than 3 minutes. If necessary, to accommodate all speakers within the 30-minute overall limit, the board president may shorten each speaker's time. Constructive criticism is in order. Rudeness, vulgarity, disruptive conduct, or remarks disrespecting personal dignity are not in order and will not be allowed. Under the Arizona Open Meeting Law, the governing board cannot discuss or act on any items not listed on the agenda. Board members may respond to criticism made by a speaker, ask staff to review a matter, or ask that a matter be put on a future agenda.
Please state your name for the record. And
Glenn Milnar. Board, Dr. Finch, thank you for having me here. Thank you for what you do, by the way. It's important to our school and our kids and our communities. Thank you. I'm glad I came here tonight. Originally, I came here because I wanted to support the Mandarin immersion program. There was rumors going through the community that the support by this board was waning. But hearing tonight, I'm hearing that you're actually somewhat in support still of the program, that your main concern is the vetting process that goes behind the hiring of foreign nationals to put in your schools, which is a very good concern. I originally came here because up in the Anthem community, rumors are running rampant that someone from the board had a meeting up in Anthem and you discussed that this board wants to cut funding and support for the Mandarin immersion program at Gavilan Peak School. I wanted to, first of all, say if this rumor is false, let's put the rumor to bed. If I can help you, I'd like to, because there's a lot of community people up in Anthem that are concerned about this, and this will probably say 50 people like me who are going to follow me in my steps and come to your next few meetings to talk just like I'm going to. So if I can prevent that, I'd like to. If the rumor is true, then I'd like to talk about the benefits of the Mandarin program and why it should continue. As far as merits, I am a foreign government employee. I mean, not foreign, a federal government employee. I have been I have federal government employee, and I have been living all over the United States. I have been deployed to various nations internationally, including living in Denmark for 5 years with my family. What you notice overseas, especially in Denmark, is that the proficiency of foreign languages, and usually multiple foreign languages, is quite good. You delve into why the Danes are so good at foreign languages. It's because they, at the age of 7, they immerse their children into at least one, if not 2, foreign language programs. Their language abilities are incredible. They're better than some Americans I know. It's in English. It's truly remarkable. Working in this with the embassies overseas, you notice that the State Department and all our government agencies are desperately trying to seek people with competent people with foreign language abilities to represent the United States abroad. Living overseas, you see Americans who are living in Europe working for IBM and Microsoft and other corporations representing their business interests in a global market. We need competent people with foreign skills, foreign language skills. This Mandarin program at Gavilan Peak does this. I would encourage that before you ever decide to cut the program, that you know what you have. Stanford University did a recent, thank you. Thank you very much. Stanford University in the last couple of years did a study on Palo Alto School District. The K through 12 program has an immersion program there, and while there's always flaws with studies, the basic results of that study showed there's tremendous benefits in the Mandarin immersion program. Know what you have here at Gavilan Peak. The children, the opportunity here in Arizona, the children that started in that program 7 years ago are now in the 8th grade. They're going to be in high school next year. Let's do a study. Find out if they're doing better at curriculum than other students. Are they getting scholarship and grant opportunities and going to universities maybe in a few years that other kids aren't doing, or at least if they're doing just as well, if there's no difference, maybe that'll give you the support to cut the program. But if not, let's find out what we have, because I think this is a tremendous program. You've got a lot of businesses here in Arizona, Boeing, Raytheon, Honeywell, that are on international platforms. They're constantly looking for people with language abilities. It's a good program for the state. It's good for our kids. It's good for the community. And I just wanted to be here to support it. And once again, if the rumors are false, excuse me, let's squash them. Thank you. Thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you for.
Thank you.
We can't respond
No,
unless
I
he's
can-
directly attacking
I can
someone.
ask
We
Dr.
cannot.
Finch to follow up on something.
Yes, that we can. We can.
And
ask-
so I guess my request remains the same from last week. Can I have I want to know what's being communicated to the Anthem community. I want to know I have no idea what the rumors are coming from, who is saying what to them. If you could investigate that and send it back to the board. I don't know what they're hearing.
My personal perception tonight would be a good example. Tonight, and this has happened at many of our board meetings, we have concerns about parts of the Mandarin. That would get any parent excited. So since I've arrived, I've been here 5 months now. Pretty much we've hit Mandarin at probably every other meeting in some kind of form. Some concerns. Sometimes it's better, more specific to the program. Sometimes it's denying professional development or like the concerns that it was tonight. So it's I would not. It's being broadcast, so they could be picking it up that way. That's just my perception.
That doesn't sound though like what he said. He said there was a meeting where
Could have
they were
been,
told.
yeah, it could have
Board
been
member.
like conversations with Kurt. That's when I was at the Elevate, for example, I probably had 10 questions about the Mandarin program, and I just said, "Hey, we're working on it. We want to keep it, but anything's possible."
Perhaps I misunderstood, but I thought the gentleman said that a specific person had gone to Gavilan Peak and a rumor started. And
I don't think I've had
comments were made.
conversations with Kurt there. But
I think that because we really should only give direction. So if
Yep.
you could work with your
Sure.
administration and then perhaps
Thanks.
take the information and then see if you can find out. Because it may be as simple as many of us go to LD meetings. It could be as simple as they took something that was said at one of the LD meetings,
Sure.
a concern, and then all of a sudden we're cutting funding. So we just
Sure.
need to
Yep.
we need to narrow it down and then perhaps put out a clear.
I would also like to suggest.
Can we let him go?
Yeah, you can go. Thanks.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I also would think it's important. It's my job, and I've directed Dr. Galligan to start working on this to give us a plan of where's this. When does this rocking horse stop? And so we have that's in the works, and that would also help. For example, what's the high school end of it? Is it exploratory? Is it an elective? Is it immersion? What are we expecting at the other site that's marching up to 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th grade? What is the overall scope? And I think that would help. Also, if the board could then make a thumbs up or thumbs down on this plan concept. That's what I was thinking.
Are we off the agenda?
Well, no, we're just giving direction. Ms. O'Brien, did you have anything you had?
I do have a question. Yes. I think in order to help quash any rumors or confirm them, whichever it may work out, that plan that I was going to ask that we have some kind of discussion. It does not, so that we can discuss this program as a board. So if we could have it on the agenda, I know we have very packed agendas. I don't know exactly where it might fit, but I would think that this has raised to a level of some priority, and however it fits in with what you just talked about, Dr. Finch, would be wonderful. Not that we have to have a vote, but at least where we could have a discussion and maybe communicate some of our thoughts and beliefs. Thank you, Dr. Finch.
Ordway?
Perhaps we could have information from the program from K through 12, so everyone, no matter how long they have known about it or not, so we could get the overall picture and we can get the specific detail, because this is, the Mandarin immersion is the only K-12, actually K-16 program that we have going. So there's a lot of historical information behind it, a lot of funding information. There's just a lot of information. So I think that an informational meeting before we discuss something would be great, because the information is going to take time to give to us.
Is it, are you the same information we've gotten repeatedly? Is that?
No, not repeatedly, because we don't know anything about the kind of visas that people get. We haven't been given a meeting, or we haven't had a consolidated meeting where you can say that someone who's been in immersion Mandarin, their AIMS test, or their...
But do we want to request specific data for that?
I
Because
think
like
that
I
we
said,
want to know, Dr. Gallen, what word am I looking for? Like, I don't want a surface overview. I just really want to see what the program has done.
I would like also
Sure.
suggest, and I think I've actually talked about this before, that this is part of a bigger argument or a bigger discussion about immersion schools in general, i.e. Spanish, traditional,
French.
branch, coding, et cetera, et cetera. I think the board needs to have that discussion. So to put Ms. O'Brien's point, to add, I would suggest that we not just add Mandarin, but I think we should add immersion and tackle all 5 of them at the same time and a topic this meeting sometime in the future.
And then maybe some specific questions,
Yep.
because it's,
We can
we
give you
have
that
had
kind of
overview,
information
but
in a Thursday update, the Mandarin data as it comes in. But I think the bigger question is the big process, the big.
part of our first survey. Getting input, I don't know, I'm just, sorry, speaking out of
Point
turn.
well taken. no.
I'm just looking for the information to
We
be
can get
to
that.
be presented in a full package instead of
Sure.
piecemeal when you cannot
gather it
get
too.
the entire picture when you get it
Sure.
piecemeal.
Okay, the future dates are posted. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
We are adjourned from our official meeting. We do still have a short, it looks like it'll be a very short work session, but does anybody need to excuse themselves
Yes.
before? Thank you. 5 minute, and then we'll. Miss Crooks, can I have a minute? Miss Crooks? Sorry, I used my phone. You didn't run fast enough.
The minutes. No, I just want to do some for all of you. I know, I did that intentional, just. Okay. So, anyway. No, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure it was okay. 'Cause, you know. Okay. I wanna make sure.
Okay. So let's, yeah. Is that recording? Okay. Let's call to order the work session of the governing board. Let the record show all members are still present. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda?
I move we adopt the agenda.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Program evaluation, Dr. Finch, or who's presenting? Scott? Dr. Smith.
President Fisher, members of the governing board, please ignore the
Man behind the curtain.
It is my pleasure tonight to start a little discussion on program evaluation. What you have before you and is being displayed here for the PowerPoint should look very familiar because it's one that I had sent to you previously, I think with a video about it, and it kind of summarized where we were with our kind of investigation into perceptual data on program evaluation. So I'm going to fly through the first couple of slides and not repeat a lot of it, and ask you to please stop me and slow me down if you have a question on anything specific. So we did this survey kind of trying to get the perceptions from both from three specific groups: you, the board, executive cabinet, and pre-K-12 administrators, on the urgency and complexity of several of our programs if we were to do a program evaluation on them. And here you can see the responses for urgency across all groups. Here you can, and then I showed you, well, what does it look like when I compare what the perceptions of pre-K-12 administrators were to the board, and were there any gaps? And we talked a little about it. Yeah, there's a couple of gaps here and there, but in general it's pretty consistent. And then we talked about were there any gaps between all responses and executive cabinet. Same thing, there were a couple of gaps here and there, and we probably need to address them as we move forward, and we will in this discussion. But in general, it looked pretty consistent. And then we did the same thing, or kind of then also looked at complexity in the video that I sent you previously, and we saw, again, special ed at the top of complexity, just like we saw on urgency, but this is rank ordered from all the responses. So the punchline, or where I'm trying to get real quickly, is this slide right here, which is really the scatter chart comparing urgency and complexity. So the further along the horizontal axis you go, the more urgent people thought these program evaluations were going to be, and the further up on the vertical axis, the more complex. And it's this point where I said, well, let's really focus on this quadrant right here, because that's the quadrant that is most urgent and least and the simplest to do. There's only one problem: there's nothing in that quadrant. So I'm done with that quadrant. I already finished it. So then I said, well, let's look at a couple of other places here, and kind of there's two main quadrants kind of in this picture. If you want to think of, hey, there's stuff at the far extreme that's both probably high urgency but also, by the way, highly complex, at least perceptually. And my answer to the survey is in there also, along with each of yours. And then there's that next section, which kind of has a pretty large spectrum of both urgency and complexity, but that's the less urgent, less complex, although they do nudge up, especially on the urgency spectrum. That's where we were with the video. That's kind of where we ended with the video, with a couple of kind of plans to move forward. One of the things that I planned to move forward was to at least look at a couple other dimensions, at least with executive cabinet, and those dimensions were, what are the financial and cultural impact of these programs? And it was really a kind of a wide open question that I presented to cabinet. So we did this in a cabinet exercise, just kind of where do we think the big, do we think there was a low, medium, or high financial impact and a low, medium, or high cultural impact of these programs? And Lo and behold, special ed ended up at the far end of the spectrum on that one also. So kind of consistent with the urgency and complexity. But you did see a couple of things switch around and with these two dimensions. You saw Tech Rich jump up there. You still have those two dots around the VP. Those are the two Vista Peak programs, the alternative high school and the public day school. So that stayed up high, but a couple of things moved up above them, and then you still see the clustering of most of the other stuff down below that. So I'm not sure how much insight that gave us, other than to kind of reinforce, hey, these are the ones, you know, that have big impact with the district, as well as them. And in all honesty, the cultural impact probably leads a lot to the urgency that people have associated with the programs that ended up high on that spectrum. So we did that little exercise in cabinet, and I wanted you to be able to see that. But we also followed up with a breakdown. We said special ed is a big topic, and we thought you needed to break it down into more specific subcomponents, and we did a follow-up survey on special ed. And this is the result of that survey. Again, the same dimension of urgency and complexity was done with special ed, and here is the urgency kind of bar chart, as well as the heat map that I presented to you in the video. The blue bars would represent kind of admin's rank ordering, and the topics are sorted from highest urgency to lowest urgency based on their responses. And then the red bars, mostly for your benefit, is to see, okay, and there's no right or wrong here. There's no, it's just were there any gaps between what I would call our people out there on the ground fighting the battle every day, doing the work in the schools, their perceptions, and where our heads are as executive cabinet and the board. So that's why I put the red bars up there, so you could see that also. And then the heat map, again, just to refresh your memory, this is an opportunity primarily to look for, is there a column, a topic in special ed that, you know, kind of has, you know, two greens and then a red, or two reds and then a green, to show there's a disconnect between one of the groups. So the top line being admin, and the middle line being cabinet, and the bottom line being board. You really don't see anything glaring jump out there. You know, mostly you might see some yellows and oranges in one column there, but there's not anything that's a huge disconnect that says, whoa, one group thought something was dramatically more urgent than the other. And I think so they're just two different tools of looking at those things across the topics of special ed. Let me speak just for real quickly to how we, you know, kind of came to these topics, the breaking down special ed. That was pretty much done just with in a meeting with Dr. McCusker and Dr. Galligan and myself, and kind of saying, how would you start to carve out pieces that would make sense to look at. So you see things like the far left, their program delivery, and the philosophy around program delivery and least restrictive environment. That's that big a topic. And then disability and eligibility services was one we thought was a topic. So all of those are things that come into the special ed world, which kind of reinforces the first comment. The first part of that was, we need to break special ed down and think about different components of it, and not just tackle it all at once. But you can see all the topics across that. And if you want, you kind of, those are abbreviations and shortened versions of those topics. I could show you the full version of those topics as we go forward. But this is kind of trying to help us drive to kind of how do we plan out now, really jumping in and doing some formal evaluations of topics across our district. So I took this data, and I took the previous data, and I met a couple of times with Dr. Finch, Dr. Galligan, and we kind of set out some guiding principles here. We said, well, we collected the data, and we collected it for a reason. So first of all, let's let that input from our stakeholders drive a lot of this. So you're going to see, as I start to put together a little draft, which you'll see that punchline in just a second, was one, use the input from the stakeholders. Two, especially when they're heavy lift special ed topics, we would probably be kind of embedded in only one of those at any one time. We don't want to chop off, we don't want to, bite off 3 or 4 topics that are heavy special ed stuff and try to tackle it all at once. And that kind of leads into the third bullet, which is more generic, which is at any one time kind of make sure you're not lifting all heavy stuff, but if you can do a heavy lift and then also bite off a smaller chunk or a smaller item or two, let's see if we can do that. You'll see when we do get to my little draft of a proposed potential plan that I've taken I think all of the curriculum items out. And the curriculum items were taken out because they're basically already on their own cycle. Most, depending on the content, you're either on a 5 or 10 year cycle of reviewing, making sure we're aligned with standards and reviewing the curriculum materials, and there's a formal process regulated by statute for doing that. So I've taken those out of the current plan, and we can certainly add them back in if we think we need to. And then the final guiding principle, which you don't really see in the draft plan, but in the back of my head is, as we start to do these and we start to learn, we start to, whether they're formative or summative program evaluations, probably at some point in the future, 2, 3, 4 years, I don't know when it is, come back and reassess, kind of where are we? Do we still have the same things as priorities? Do we need to resurvey? I don't know. But reassess the process and the progress and the timelines as we go forward. Okay. With that said, a couple of other constraints that I kind of want to just keep in the back of your head as you look at the timeline. Right now, kind of in my mind, data analysis could take on such things as program evaluation and become more of an evaluation department, but we are a 2-person department, and our primary responsibilities right now is to support our campuses and support academics and support school and department improvement. Another thing to keep in the back of my mind, in any program evaluation, those people would not be the only people impacted. You have to get the other people from departments and schools involved in the process, and it would involve their expertise and their input, and to go along with the previous topic, probably some surveying of them to get more information into the program that you're talking about. And I just want to remind that, as we look at the list of programs, that, program evaluation could be a powerful tool when done, correctly and done with rigor to show you the value of the things that we're doing for our kids and the options and the opportunities we have for them. And we might want to think about, would this program, an evaluation of this program, help us establish that value as we look at the order that I've put them down. Just a reminder that evaluations can be formative and summative. We're not going to, because I think some people get a little bit nervous when you say you're doing a program evaluation, because it means you're evaluating this program to make a decision to stop doing it. It's not always summative. It's mostly, as a matter of fact, they're probably usually more formative in like, what do we need to tweak? What do we need to add? What do we need to drop as part of this, as opposed to, hey, and sometimes it results in stopping the whole program, for example, like the TAP evaluation we did a couple years ago. And then finally, maybe keep in the back of your mind, is there opportunities for us to leverage outside resources and evaluations for other districts to help make these things more effective and efficient going forward. And I gave you some examples where we've used Hanover in the past. We used Heinfeld Meach to do the efficiency study. Those are the examples of when we kind of leveraged outside resources to help with this. So drum roll then comes to an opportunity for us to start the discussion around what would be a possible timeline of trying to fit all of these things in. I know it's a long period of time, but given the constraints and the resources we have and what it might take to do one of these, and I'm not necessarily saying the length of the program that you see up there. For example, I'll start with the first one, Special Ed Program Delivery Philosophy. The length of the letters to write that in there does not necessarily indicate how long I think the program evaluation will take. It's just kind of the starting point is trying to let's calendar a starting point for kicking some of these off. So here you see 21 or 22 possible things laid out over a period of time. That is just a starting point for a discussion. Is this and it's driven mostly by the input we got from our stakeholders that I mentioned previously. And I'll leave it open to you to ask questions or have a discussion about it.
We'll go with Ms. Tweedy because she raised her hand first, and then I have one as well.
What, I guess I'm a little bit confused. What is by 2020 SPED disability eligibility? I mean, what do you mean by that?
I'm sorry, where are you looking?
I'm looking at the
Bottom of
blue lettering
2020.
at the bottom right.
Oh,
Because, I mean, we have kind of laws defining the eligibility. I don't understand what you're evaluating, I guess.
a special ed disability and eligibility. Is that the one you're looking at? That was, well, that's a great, actually, the questions on the special ed topics were, those specific topics were developed in a discussion, again, with Dr. McCusker and Dr. Galligan. So to look at how we manage our disability services and eligibility services, but really it's kind of it's still a broad topic, yeah, and it is driven a lot by legislation and what we can and can't do, but it would be looking around how we manage those services. And to be honest with you, that the first part of that of many of those special ed things would be delving into what really is the definition of that program evaluation. Then, when we talk even the program delivery philosophy, kind of what is that scope? That scope could probably include, for example, a lot of the other minor things, like it might probably incorporate a transition of school to work, TSW, might incorporate homebound stuff. And so the scope of those would still have to be kind of ironed out as you kick those off.
Well, I guess, and I would like more, and because of due to the time and not wanting to go on at length, but I don't really understand these blue. I don't understand what's encompassed under all of the blue things, and I don't understand how we could wait to 2023 to address SPED staffing. I guess those are things that are jumping out at me.
And I was going to kind of say the same thing, because a lot of these all seem to, there's two things. One, they all seem to kind of are entangled within each other. So if you try and, it's like if I got a lot of hair, if I tried to just comb one strand and leave all the rest for a while, it's just not going to work.
I got the solution for that.
Yeah, I'm not taking that
Oh.
one. I'm not. But so that's my one concern is I guess I'm not understanding what you're doing because these all are intertwined. The other thing that I'm concerned with, because Deer Valley is an awesome district, and I really would love for us to be leaders, not followers. And I will tell you, I, as a SPED parent, am being solicited by at least 2 other districts who have advanced transition to work programs, as they, and yes, your kid walks with this class, but we know they're not ready for 2 more years. We're going to have them back here, and this is what we're doing. And we have a full program and a set and life skills, and so I don't want us to be lagging and losing enrollment because someone else is leading. So maybe I'm confused by it. Ms. Ordway had something, and then I'll.
Well, I think a lot of it, you have to decide if we're changing our SPED delivery philosophy, because that obviously hinges on everything else, other than what's legislated. But I'm trying to think of where inside of there would the voice of building administrators kind of lay, and or teachers that have these suggestions that I've been hearing for years, that like having a cluster site, or having regional whatevers. Where would all that go? Is that all under the delivery philosophy?
President Fisher and Ms. Ordway, I believe that probably falls mostly under the delivery philosophy. And anything, not just the blue ones are blue because they came from the special ed subtopics.
And that
Okay.
was the one that was
Right.
looking as what we want to do the
There's
most.
a top one.
Yes.
And so, but any of those 22 topics are not going to be done in the isolation of my office pulling data from Power Schools. I can't even start to touch them. And you know, just to come to, again, I'll repeat a previous point. I got to go out to teachers. We got to go out to teachers and building administrators and other stakeholders when appropriate and get more data from them. And I kind of say that, and I want to emphasize that because, and we're also going to launch a employee satisfaction survey in January. We're going to launch a parent community satisfaction in February. And then I'm probably going to launch something, at least one, if not 2 or 3 different versions of data gathering tools and information, you know, around whatever we want to deem as the first program evaluation, and maybe the second program evaluation a couple of months after that.
Well, it almost sounds to me like our very first thing we should do is decide how that evaluation is going to be done. Because like I said, like you said, I didn't say it, you said you have a department of 2, and my concern is the Department of 2 is not going to be able to do this, and I'm not saying Phoenix Union does everything right, because I'm not necessarily sure I even like what they're doing, but they're also doing a program evaluation, and I'm being honest, I love the district I work for as well, but sometimes they're looking, oh, you're doing what? But they are doing a program evaluation. They blasted it out in teams, and the teams went and are going out and gathering information and then bringing it back in. We have our SIMS meetings, and we all report and do different. There's a lot of models that you can use. Is the model of we're going to have this one department do something, a realistic model to get it done in a district this size. So I think maybe our first thing would be to decide what model we're going to use to truly be a success in doing this evaluation. Ms. Frank?
It might make some sense, you know, starting out, especially looking at SPED, to perhaps bring people together by region and have administrators by region, because different regions will have different demographics and different issues, and perhaps start there. We definitely have to have the input from the principals and the teachers, who are the ones who are going to have to implement whatever the program is. And looking at, say, SPED mapping or SPED staffing, those two things really go hand in hand, and they're contingent on your delivery philosophy. So the philosophy we have now, or the one that was brought in by Michael Remus, certainly had an impact on mapping and staffing, and students, and a huge impact on that. So we can't really separate all those things out in quite the way that you've done. But I guess my 2 cents would be let's bring people together by region and start there.
And I really do want some more detail. I don't understand what falls under these. But on top of that, looking at waiting till 2025 for SPED private placement, we're losing a lot of money in empowerment scholarships, several million a year. We're paying several million a year in private placement, and we're paying, I don't know exactly what we pay to operate Vista Peaks with very few students. I don't know that we can afford to keep doing this for 8 more years. So I don't know if that is something we take into account on top of how we've all voted. I think you do need to look at the private placement, because I think that's some of the reason we can't afford the staffing to do the mapping. We're going to have to try to find a way to attract either the students with the empowerment or expand Vista Peak so we're not paying so much in private placement. But I don't think we can keep doing all 3 of these things for 8 more years. So, somebody's got to look at that.
To that point, I think that is where I have seen solicitations come from other public LEAs that are saying, you know, you have a special needs student, he's a junior in high school, this is what we're doing, and we talk about trying to drive enrollment. I just want to make sure we're not driving enrollment to these other districts that have these comprehensive programs already. And that's a concern. I know one, but we also need to look at what we're doing here, because as I've assisted with getting a program in Phoenix Union, seeing what they're doing, hey, that's pretty cool. But then I'm thinking, well, yeah, well, we're doing this, and of course I don't share that with them because I don't want to. But it's so maybe we need to see what we're doing right and make sure we're not going to lose students, because if we are driving them out to private placement and driving them out to other districts, plus we have a new autism high school that's going to be opening on this side of town next year, maybe mid-year next year, but it's geared towards high school and towards getting students, and we have an extremely fast growing rate of autism at the time when my son was diagnosed, and they're all becoming that age where they will be driven into these schools. And like I've said, when it comes to these empowerment scholarships, because I did inquire about it, it was like, well, yeah, we'll cut you a check for $24,000. And I said, okay, well then what do I do with my son then? And my option was to drive him to Tempe. That's not the world we're in anymore. I don't have to drive him to Tempe. I can drive him down to Glendale Union, Phoenix Union, or the incoming autism school. I keep him in Deer Valley because I love Deer Valley and he loves Deer Valley. But there's a lot of kids just like him, and I don't know. I think if we're this slow in moving, I mean, at my last IEP meeting, my IEP team was joking that perhaps if we actually had a school mirrored some of these others, because we've lost employees to these other schools, if we had something like that here, we could name it. We had a joke about the name and about how to make sure that Vista Peaks is remaining serving the purpose that I think it was originally intended for and growing into that. So I think maybe we're not understanding this chart, but I think beyond that we need to get a comprehensive of what this looks like, because we don't have time to wait for all those students to age out into other districts, or our enrollment's going to drop significantly.
Well,
So,
if I may jump in here, special education in itself does not pay for itself. I ran a Westmac special education, that's just a well-known fact. But I think a couple things that you hopefully you're getting from watching or from looking at this chart is, one, it's big. That's the first point. But I also want you to think, since this whole concept of evaluation is massive, his department can't pull this off. Hopefully you're figuring that out.
Yes.
A two-person team can't pull this off without spreading it out. Now, I don't disagree with Ms. Tweedy in that it wouldn't hurt to have definitions of what each of these things are, to kind of peek inside Dr. McCuster's brain, or Melissa's brain, on what she was thinking, or Dr. Galligan, what they were thinking on what would encompass each piece. Then it might make more sense from a chart perspective. But the blue is, remember, you and the administrative team and the cabinet evaluated their perceptions. So these blue ones are heavy lifts from their perspective and your perspective, because you remember that's really the first part of the charts, first part of his PowerPoint, when we broke it down into smaller parts. Definitions would help, but Tech Rich High School, for example, is an easier lift, one that we can put our hands around, and so that's why we kind of married it up. But there's no way we could squish this calendar into 2 years, for example, even if it was an awesome idea, without hiring 10 more people to pull. The more you squish this calendar, the more people we need, is my point. I don't disagree with you that we need to do all this stuff tomorrow, but we don't have the horsepower to do it. I don't. Yep, I agree. Well, that's a good point. But if you don't know your philosophy, you can't make any of these decisions. And so I think that's both the board's perspective and the administrator's perspective was program delivery philosophy is the number one hurdle we have to jump over first before we can even make.
I agree,
those
but
decisions.
seeing private placement at 2025, I would just, and I don't think this is a heavy lift. How much are we losing in empowerment and scholarship? How much are we paying in private day? And how much does it cost to operate Vista Peaks with all the staffing, given the money we get back for, I think there are 60 students or something. So I'm just saying, if we're hemorrhaging millions of dollars, we can't just leave the drain open for 8 years.
Sure, I don't think we're hemorrhaging millions, but I get your point.
Might be.
Yeah, I get your point though. But yeah, the what I want you to see from it is this: we don't have the horsepower to squish this calendar, unless we want to. Which, if you said tomorrow, well, we want all this done by 3 years, we can get it done.
Ms. Frank's been patiently waiting.
Yeah, I don't know that it's a matter of squishing the calendar, as perhaps moving some items around and prioritizing some things more than others. And I did want to make the point, because I have heard this from administrators, and I do know this to be true from my experience as a teacher. We need to look at the balance with enrollment in terms of our SPED philosophy, and that we have lost gen ed students because of the way we deliver special education. And we've lost special ed students because of the way we deliver special education. And so looking at that, looking at the lack of level C classrooms at individual schools, and I know behaviors have been a big problem, and we trigger behaviors with some students because of the way we deliver special education. So it not just has the impact on the special education students, but it also has impact on our enrollment with our general education students. So,
and to that point, I'd like to note that I mean, I've heard I don't know how many business managers say SPED doesn't pay for itself. Well, that may be true for some students. It is not true of all. And the ones that you're going to lose are the ones that it more than pays for. The ones that it pays enough for that they are actually compensating for the shortfalls of others. Those are going to be the students that are moved to the other districts. And that loss of revenue.
I don't have that money, but
Nobody, well, that's what I'm saying. Nobody else does either. I've been asking that for 5 years.
we
Does
figured it out
anybody really have
in
something?
in
And nobody
my
does.
other job. It was
But
shocking.
those are going to be the students that leave, the students that will get that $24,000 and don't cost that to the district. And so,
what we're looking for is a suggestion on kind of what to do next, because this is what we've learned so far. Again, this is surveying your perception, surveying principals, surveying the executive cabinet, lining them up. That's where it came from. Are we on the wrong trail, or what would you like us to do next?
When you say that you surveyed administration, what level administrators? I just wanted to clarify that real quick. So you did, okay. Okay. So together, the board and employees to that administrative level have said that we need to figure out what our philosophy is. Perhaps we need to change it, because no matter what else we have, except for the things that are required by law, we're not going to be able to change the rest of it. We're not going to be able to change the delivery model or any of that until we figure out what our philosophy is. Because if our philosophy is that we keep you in the classroom no matter what, and we don't do a regional cluster or as you were talking about the level C classrooms, if we don't utilize Vista Peak, perhaps, and I'm just saying this is what I've heard, and these are things that have sounded like it's what we want to do, and we don't utilize Vista Peak for maybe even the level C and the level D or whatever, then we're not going to get anywhere if we don't start with the philosophy first. So I know that doesn't help you at all, but I just think we have to really figure out the philosophy first, however we do that, and then perhaps launch into the next parts. knowing that we're not going to wait until 2025 to figure out how to set staffing at a reasonable place.
Frank, your hand is
So I would say we need to go back to the principals, the assistant principals, the teaching staff, and whether we do it as a council or a committee or by region, and have them discuss, digest what works well with what we're doing on their campus and what doesn't work well, and see what the commonalities are across the district. But I suggest region because that seems like an easy, logical way to break it down. And then once we have that data, what's working on campuses, what's not working, then I think we can maybe move towards where we need to go with philosophy.
I think
Jenny,
we already
to your
know that. Go
point
ahead.
too, then wouldn't they be able to also bring their solutions?
Oh, absolutely.
Right? I mean,
yeah.
so that might give everybody a better place to start. If they're already telling you what the issues are, what they feel the solutions are, then we can figure out if this is something we can do.
And I also think that goes to the point of figuring out how we're even going to do it, because obviously two people can't. But I don't know why we would expect two people to. I mean, I appreciate Dr. Smith's work, and God knows I love Mary Beth. I have for many, many years. She's just an amazing, amazing gal, smart as a whip. But why would we think that two individuals would be the only ones that would be able to evaluate these programs? We need a collaborative work because they can't carry that lift. We do have all this other stuff to do. So there should be members of those teams. Gather it, get it, bring it in, bring the suggestions, bring the cost, what's working, what's not. Why fix it if it's not broke? Bring that in and then take a look. And then figure out where that goes. Maybe I'm misunderstanding the concept we're going with, but I see finger pointing, so I must have missed Miss O'Brien and then Miss Frank.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Ordway, Ms. Fisher. Thank you for putting together the survey, and I'm going to call you Scott because I'm so tired. I have forgotten your last name.
I did the same thing.
Thank you.
That's okay,
why.
Mrs.
I'm
Ordway.
so sorry. I'm just going to admit that right there on the record for everybody. So thank you, Dr. Smith. And now I'm going to try to work through a couple of the notes I made while my fellow board members were talking. I heard statements about reprioritizing what's on this calendar, and I guess we surveyed everybody, and my understanding is this is how the survey priority came up. And I get some things go hand in hand, but I think that we got a little bit, it sounded to me like we got into the weeds on some things. And if we have a couple things to say, are we saying we can move forward with a start, and maybe you do the first one, and then we find out we need to reprioritize some of the other ones. I think we're looking for some direction on moving forward from time frame, department issues. Am I missing the mark, Dr. Finch?
That's what we need to know. And I'm actually, I actually don't think we have the horsepower to pull it off at the magnitude and the depth that you want. I would recommend we're going to need some more bodies, and I don't know how many bodies we're going to need, but I know that's probably a Dr. Smith's question. How much because remember, his number one job from my chair is supporting the schools, the academic side of the monster. This evaluation is a whole nother entity, and that's why you're seeing it kind of spread out. But
right,
but
and
there's no reason why we can't. We need from you direction. If we need to squish the calendar, stretch the calendar, move stuff around, we just need to know if we're on the right path or not, or what do you want from us? Because that would help us.
Right, and I think part of what maybe this board needs is a regrouping on what our priorities. We have a lot of asks and what we want to do and accomplish with limited resources, both financially and in the human capital area. So I look at this and think, yay, let's start and get the ball rolling. But I also know that we have a lot of other priorities to look at. We have a whole nother topic, 3 other topics on our calendar for tonight. So, and this is going to cost money, and we've got to start somewhere, and start somewhere with this first one, the philosophy, and then see if things need to be shifted in priority, and if we want to scrunch it down, if we need to hire, I don't know if it's 10 people or 100 people, we've got to decide how important it is to get it done.
Well, I think that part of what the confusion is you look at the survey in your circles and what's a priority. So these are our apples. Our survey gives us our apples. And so we have right here, the priority of the apple is SPED. Okay, let's just take that one. So we took that apple and we sliced it into 100 slices and then spread them out over 10 years. It doesn't mean that our priority is, we're not addressing a priority, we're addressing a small slice of a priority. By the time we get to the end of those slices, it may not even be a priority anymore. And so is it a priority or isn't it? Because I guess that's why that other chart confuses me, is are we looking at,
But Kim, to your point.
are we cutting up a priority and
But
then
to
not
your
actually
point, like go
priority?
back to the original slide, like the one we were looking at with the words.
The last
no.
one. This.
Okay, so like looking at this, it's the only thing that actually does make sense to me on here is the program delivery philosophy, which I would say maybe we should do. But like Vista Peaks Alternative High School 2020, and then down here we have SPED private placement. Well, if they don't go to Vista Peaks, they get privately placed. SPED disability eligibility, there's 5 allowable categories by law. I mean, we're not going to change those. I don't understand what they mean, so it's kind of hard to, even within.
I think that's the point.
It's
This
not
doesn't make sense.
I mean, SPED mapping, well, we're going to map differently, but we're going to do that without hiring the staff for 2 years. I mean, it's just really hard to understand that. It's hard to give a direction on that. It doesn't
Mrs. Fisher.
make sense.
President Fisher, Ms. Tweedy, we're not going to stop doing these things because we're waiting for a program evaluation. We're still going to be mapping. We're still going to be, offering mental health services. We're not going to stop. Just because they're on here in the calendar doesn't mean I don't offer any mental health services until we finish the 2019 program evaluation. This is targeting times where we will spend specific time with a formal evaluation on these things. And so the question, as Dr. Finch has I think appropriately stated, is do we need to move stuff around because it needs a formal
But we don't know what it
evaluation
means.
now? And I already had on a previous slide that clearly you got to come back and reassess and reevaluate as you're doing things. If we do special ed program delivery philosophy and it ends up tackling most of the any of the what we thought were disability eligibility, concerns and any mapping concerns, we're not going to then do them 2 years later
But
because
Dr.
they were
Smith,
on this original
I
chart.
mean, with all due respect, though, it doesn't make sense. It's hard to give direction on something that doesn't make sense. The last thing on here in 2026 is an IEP. Well, they would have to be eligible to have an IEP. The IEP would go first, or they wouldn't even be in SPED. I don't understand what this means.
Well, I think the if I could be helpful here, I think remember the chart was urgency and complexity. So what they're saying, if you pick that as a no, it's not super important at the moment, or it's super hard to address or evaluate. That's why you've made it lower in your choices. So that's where this chart came from. So it's most urgent, most complex, and then divided those into parts, and then resurveyed everyone again, and they said IEPs, for example, they must like it what it's doing at the moment, and it doesn't need to be evaluated as much as special ed philosophy. That's the kind of the meaning behind the chart. Does that make sense?
Irrespective of our ability to understand the way this chart is put together, the reality is that we have agreed as a board and administration and everyone, that SPED is a priority. And we've all agreed that the delivery philosophy is a primary concern. Can we just agree to move forward on that, and then we'll try and figure the rest out?
Right.
Because I just would hate for us, because I will say I see an apple that's been sliced into 1,000 and just tossed. But we have to start a step at a time, because if you don't take that first step forward, you're standing still. So could we at least agree that regardless of whether or not this chart makes any sense, our priority by the survey is the SPED and it's the philosophy?
I think if we start with philosophy, we'll get a lot of good information that will inform what we do with the other SPED components. I mean, I suspect we'll find that we really need to work on mapping and staffing.
It'll address a lot, I think.
I like
think
to.
we at least need to start there.
I think Ms. Tweedy's on the right trail. Actually, now that I think about it, you weren't involved in the weeds of this, so I'd almost suggest that we do a timeout for what's one more month. Come back with definitions of what these things are a little bit, so it gives you a little more guidance, so you can actually get the depth side of it, because it is spaghetti, and we might be able to tell you why we separated. I wasn't in this meeting where they separated mental health out. That was Dr. McCusker did that, and Dr. Galligan and Dr. Smith, they decided that's one entity by itself. But it sure would be nice if it said this is the areas that we think it encompasses. What does it hurt us to wait another month? This is our first stab at it, and so it's our best guess of what we thought the survey was telling us, and dividing this apple into easy lifts with the amount of people that we have. We could put that apple back together, but we're going to need an army to do it. So that's why it was broken into parts. So I would almost suggest we take time out for a month. We'll do a little more work on it, come back with more detail, and that might help. Because I want a thumbs up from everyone, not a mediocre from the team.
I mean, I would agree with starting with the philosophy. I do. It's the other stuff on here. So if people want to get going on the philosophy, and that seems to be the first thing, I just don't understand this. So it's hard to give any further direction without understanding.
I agree. I want you to all be clear on it first, because you might all say this is not going to work. So
Works for me.
Can we take a break and come back the 2nd January meeting, our topic, and hopefully have better details for you, so it makes a little more sense. But you and bind Mr. Dr. Smith on time frame, or can you move your chart?
I'm not going to finish until I start, so I can't.
So now you're batting 1,000 is basically what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, JD's going to make like 100 million with three times 300. So
Yeah.
yeah, you got this.
I'm going to carry his bag.
Could we go ahead and start the program philosophy part? I mean,
We could.
forming teams.
I'm not saying we should, but I want the board to say, yeah, this is awesome versus, well,
I don't know
maybe.
that you're ever
Let's
going
start
to
with
get
this.
that when it comes to SPED, but
Okay.
well, I said it's the chart that's more of a
Okay.
confusion. So.
Okay. Well, if you said, let's go, everybody's 2 thumbs up for special ed philosophy, then we can do that. But I would.
I'm not going to make that pose, but yes.
It's
I will.
almost 10 o'clock. I've got to wake myself up. That's why I'm doing
Okay.
this.
Right.
We'll start on that, and we'll come back with a better, more footnotes
Understanding of
on
the
the
rest.
chart and why we're doing it. And then I think I would also like to, from Dr. Smith, how many more peeps do you need, and if we, at what pace do you
Absolutely.
want?
That's a great idea.
Thanks.
At 10 o'clock at night.
Okay.
Okay. Now, this other item is really just a quick preliminary discussion, because we have that long list of so many topics, and these 3 actually go together. We did provide the attorney-privileged opinion regarding our policy. And we intentionally left it as attorney-client privileged because it's not wise to discuss it openly or share it with anyone unless we've had an opportunity to talk to our attorneys. And we just we won't have that opportunity until we invite them to come in and sit with them. However, what we do know is that we need a small amount of work on our open enrollment policy. There's simple lifts, but this has been brought to us, or at least it's been brought to me, every year by multiple people for the last 3 years. I believe it's been brought to other board members at different occasions, even before they were board members. So in my opinion, at least when it comes to open enrollment, we need to determine what we believe. And I would like that to be a part of our conversation that goes along with our policy. But to Ms. Tweedy's point that she made at an earlier meeting, that is also a direct impact to transportation when we discuss, are we driving those kids in, and what do we want to look at? So are those two linked? And then how does that impact our drivers for increasing our student enrollment? Because if our open enrollment policy and what we're really seeing is just that our kids are moving from O'Connor to Ridge or Deer Valley to Ridge, or within the district, it's really not driving our enrollment. So this is just so that we get the board to say this is what we want to attack and how we want to do it. We will have to bring back the open enrollment policy in January to fix anything that needs to be fixed, but I personally don't want to just keep doing it again and again, which means I think we need to figure out what our philosophy is with that. So this is the board's opportunity to provide input in what they want to bring back in January. Ms. O'Brien?
I think I better make this a red letter day. I got to go first on a topic. Sorry.
She lifted eyebrows.
I'm a little punchy. I think that it would be important to me to have that meeting with the attorney on the attorney-client privileged information prior to discussing any philosophy I may or may not have in an open forum. So right at this point, I think that I would like
you have
some
questions specific?
Yeah, I want to, and I think we as a board that need to make sure that we're fully educated on that information. So I guess this part could be a little bit quicker. This part of the meeting might be quicker because I don't know that we can really have much more discussion unless other board members feel comfortable in communicating.
Yeah, this is really just for us to plan our meeting in January. It's not for us to discuss what we want. That's. I guess I should have made that more clear. This part is just for us to plan. In January or February, we'll have our agenda we have to put together for our first meeting. It's going to have our organizational, and then whatever the rest of the meeting is, and then our second meeting. It's just a matter of setting a schedule of what order do we want to bring these back. So do we want an attorney on that first meeting so that we can link these together and get moving forward on it?
Well,
this isn't for us to discuss it.
Okay,
now.
and to that point then, I guess, I thought we were having working sessions only on the second meeting of the month. Am I or am I confused?
That was the intent, but it hasn't been happening. That's why we're just trying to plan it so that it starts happening that way.
Okay.
Ms. Frank?
I was just going to make it a double red letter day for Mrs. O'Brien and say I agree. I would also like.
Glad someone else is as punchy as I am. And
Merry Christmas, Mrs. O'Brien. I would also like to hear what the attorney has to say.
Okay, so we're looking for the first meeting in January where we plan to have that discussion with the attorney. Ms. Tweedy.
Just a quick question. So what we sent you was what we were supposed to do, right? Like, you're going to put that at January, what I sent you about this already?
Yes, we are kind of, we've created this monster and now we're loving it too much, which is good. But we've got topics now. If you look at the other list that's in the next one down, I think Sheila put it in there for you. Under where's that? Oh, upcoming work session topics. We already have a grocery list of things.
That's what I'm saying. We need
So
to focus
are
on.
you going to move some down? Are you going to do, obviously 10 o'clock is getting late. Do you want these always to go to 10?
No.
All right. I think the original intent of your setup was the second meetings of the month. You would pick one, maybe two topics. We've been trying to tackle 3. That's why we're here till 10. But and we haven't really gotten into really super deep yet either.
Doesn't
So-
seem like we've tackled anything. That's my point, is we need to focus what we're actually wanting to tackle. And that's the reason we kind of brought these 3 to say, okay, these 3 match each other. How do we want to tackle them and get them on a schedule
But
so
they
that we
were-
can do that every other?
Yeah, but
Because
you're
they were
moving them.
scattered
You're moving them
everywhere.
around, yeah, and which is fine because remember you asked me to put them in order, so I did. But now you've pulled them into a different order and put them in a different order, which is fine. That's your prerogative. But I think what I'm asking is, do you want to do them now? You want to do them every meeting, or you still want to do the second one?
Mind to some of these, if they really do need to be addressed, and they need to be addressed now, after Christmas and New Year's, just doing a Saturday and knocking off these together and just being done with it, but not being here till 10 or 11 at night because
It's just too late. We get loopy.
Can I ask a question about the 3 you have there for the upcoming meeting in January 23rd? Are those the 3 that you had originally slotted for us, Dr. Finch?
No. If you look at the list from the list that you asked my team cabinet to read, they're scattered throughout. That's the list you asked me to prioritize.
Sorry, where?
That is
It's the one document. If you go to the first one, there's a document in there.
I go to the. I apologize.
Go under, it says transportation policy, but click on transportation policy and then there's a document attached.
Okay, I've
It's
opened
not
that
actually the
document, right?
transportation policy.
that's the request.
Oh, and you've dated those ones that
Yep.
how you wanted. Oh.
Yep. Because we couldn't decide as a group what to do, so you hand the ball to me. So I rearranged them. Actually, our team executive cabinet did, and then
And then we
at the last meeting you
rearranged them.
grabbed 3 cool ones and put them together, and that's where we're sitting here. you rearranged them, which is fine. But so do you want me to redo the list, or do you want to hand the list back to you and you go off of it, or whatever you want?
Well, and the problem I have with this list is a smorgasbord of everything. It's not a topics list. It's a list of requests. You know, Dr. Finch, I would like to have a nail file up at the dais. Let's put it on the list.
Okay.
And it's
Nail file.
It did.
it was a sarcastic.
All requests
but
from
it's-
board members.
Right.
And some of them haven't been addressed for years.
Right, and I think there was a discussion, or actually a request by Mrs. Fisher to remove the request, like policy regarding board president motion, which I had made and I received. Move those kinds of requests to a sheet that is just requests that get met in the next update. I mean, we made several requests this evening, and so those kinds of requests are different than an agenda request, which I think is what we're trying to tackle tonight about what will be upcoming agenda items in work study sessions. If I could suggest, I don't know what the January agenda is going to look like. If we could have a short meeting with the attorney, the first meeting in January, to talk about the open enrollment information they provide us, I think we could do that. If it's not, you guys will know what the agenda is. If it's going to be too stacked, then don't do it. But I think we need to see the list as Dr. Finch originally requested as well. And maybe it is time, like Darcy said, to have an additional meeting to say, to knock stuff out. But I will tell you that, we don't have board goals, and so I don't feel like we all are very focused on what our true priorities are as far as, and I don't mean that as a, I just mean that I feel like we have a lot of things that are important, and if we don't say these are our top 3 and stick to them, then
Well, that's the greater part, and that's why we haven't done that part, is because it's been a repeated, well, let's set board goals. Okay, our goal is to be nice to each other, not to be
I guess
sarcastic.
when
not
I'm
to be-
talking
and-
about,
and it-
I'm talking about board goals, I'm talking about the top three
real.
topics
We
we
haven't
want
met
to
that
cover.
Right.
So, because clearly we can't do the others, so I'm moving on. I'm going for, we want to tackle an open enrollment, or we want to tackle the transportation policy, or whatever those kinds of topics are. Let's pick them and move on.
Ms. Frank?
I have a suggestion. Perhaps after the first board meeting in January, when we reorganize, we would then want to set a Saturday work session to sort of get caught up on our list of topics. And I think if we had plenty of snacks and water bottles, we might be more productive than we are right now at 10:10 in the evening.
And let's just make it a topic-oriented meeting. Like, I don't want to, like, team build or take bizarre surveys. Just talk about this stuff.
Okay, so do you want that scheduled already? That's the question.
What do you
In
mean
other words,
scheduled
okay,
already?
so we're going to set the January meeting. Are we going to set the January meeting as nothing more than an organizational meeting and we're gone?
Don't tempt us.
No, I'm serious. I'm fine with that.
We'll have a lot of things on there,
No,
I'm
there
sure.
will need to be things on
Yeah,
there for
there'll
us
be
to
stuff on
conduct
there.
business on January.
I'm
We
going to say
can't
it's
just
10:10, and we're not
it
comatose
can't just
yet.
be an organizational meeting.
Well, it can be.
Well,
but-
it could be, but that would not
We still have to
be
pay
a
the
prudent
bills.
decision, in my
Yeah.
opinion. I would prefer we have whatever we need to have on that agenda to do business. If we can add the attorney, can we
Okay.
please add the attorney? Can we please get an email out to ask board members what time and what day in Saturday, or what Saturday in January or the beginning of February we could
do a Saturday work session.
have a Saturday
Okay.
work session.
So-
And can Dr. Finch please reprioritize our list and send that out in the next update so we can all digest that while we're celebrating the holidays with our loved ones?
I love the wrap up there. That was awesome. And it's 10:15 now.
Yeah.
Almost.
Okay, so basic business, attorney, and organizational, and we're out.
And maybe one item of business.
Well, that's what we said, basic business.
Right.
Basic
Yeah, they'll-
business.
they'll
Yeah,
be
basic
busy.
No
business.
study session, work session.
Yeah, no study session, no work session, no additional. Yep. And then out.
It'll look
Oh,
like a regular
no,
meeting.
for another
Yep.
time.
Okay, thank you.
or lots of
And I'm
things.
just going to point
Don't have
out,
to have another meeting till the end of February.
Ms. Fisher,
Yes.
now that we have our 6:30 with our celebrations, that might be a consideration when we will have our executive session with the lawyer.
We had already agreed that we would do that after.
Oh, I don't know what.
But we could,
Did I miss that tonight?
no, we
No,
talked
but
about that
but
way
we
back.
But we need to be
Right.
careful, don't we, with an attorney, because we don't know when our meetings end, so we don't want to have them come
No,
and
not
sit.
after, not
Don't mind.
after the meeting, after the,
After
After the
At
celebrations.
7 o'clock? Do you mean
That
at
could
7
take
o'clock?
After the
Church.
celebrations,
Okay, I'm
yes.
sorry. I thought you meant after our regular meeting, and I thought
that could be an expensive.
no, that was part of why we moved the celebrations out, so that we didn't have anybody waiting.
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I did not. Okay.
I like that.
Thank you for that
Didn't you say
explanation.
sirens? Yeah.
I did too.
Are we done? I mean,
So
Yep.
are you
Wrapped
saying
up?
you want celebrations, executive
Attorney.
session, and
Regular
then
meeting,
board meeting?
yes.
On the first January meeting with
The only
that-
problem is we
So-
bump into the organizational.
Yeah,
Unless you guys are
you have
fine
to
with
do
me
your-
remaining board president for the one executive session.
Yeah, you have to do your organizational first, probably.
And I don't care, there's like nothing to it. It's just, we call the meeting, we go in.
Let's just,
Well, I could run it as
That
well, too.
matters to you.
It's not our process.
what is most expedient to getting to the end of this meeting? I will agree to.
fine. Just do the,
We
do
got
the-
a good idea of what you want.
run the executive session at,
Okay,
first.
we're good with that. We have our direction. And calendar is going to be sent out. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Aye.
Aye.
Or aye.
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 Cool.
Is it not cinnamon?